Niagara, and Nicholson. We have Ken and Jack McTiernan was the citizen person, or previous recipient.
I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask councillors to please turn all electronic devices to silent or vibrate mode and ensure they're properly signed into the system. And we'll begin with our land acknowledgement statement. I call on Councillor Whalen for the statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We begin this meeting with acknowledgement that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anasazi peoples, of whom we continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today is a greeting place to homes to so many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging that reminds us that our great standard of living in Niagara is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor. I call on Councillor Bilsma for the moment of reflection.
There we go. As we gather here today as members of Regional Council, may we ever be mindful of the opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community. May we always keep in mind the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things that future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world.
Thank you, Councillor. And next we will have the singing of the national anthem. Please stand. And I'll ask Councillor Greenwood, as usual, to start us off.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in our must command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
My guess would be that this council is probably has the best singing of the national anthem of any council in Ontario. Just a guess from listening to it. Are there any items, adoption of the agenda, any items to be added to the agenda? No. Are there any changes to the order of items on the agenda? Councillor Sendzik.
Thank you, Chair. Through the clerk. In terms of the composition of the board for the NPCA, where would that fall under the current agenda, unless it's been updated? Item 8.
Clerk.
Under the chair's remarks?
That's correct.
And then we'll be dealing with that at the moment. So what I'm asking for is the indulgence of council, where I'll just simply say that we've dealt with this issue significantly, and what it does is it takes away from a lot of other work that we have on this. So if we can move it down, get through the committee work, get through the minutes of the different committees and any other pressing matters, and then deal with it later on in the meeting. I've been around this table for about 5 years now, and it seems to take a long time when the NPCA is discussed. So it's up to the indulgence of the council.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bellows seconds that motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Next, Do I have to do as amended? Okay. All in favor of the agenda as amended? Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any pecuniary interest declarations from anybody? Councillor Gale.
Yeah, you're getting sick of hearing from me on this every time. Long-term care again, Chair, because my daughter-in-law is in long-term care. Item 12.2, the budget review report, and 12.4, the committee of the whole report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. Next, we have presentations. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. In the minutes of Public Health and Social Services Committee, item number 5.6, COM 31-2019, Budget Adjustment Children's Services. I declare a pecuniary interest in that because my wife, Darlene, is Director of Children's Services.
Thank you very much. Any others? I will look around carefully. No other declarations? Thank you very much to those councillors. The next we have is the T. Roy Adams Humanitarian of the Year Award. That is going to be dealt with at this time. As members of council would know perhaps, T. Roy Adams was an eminent Niagaran, well known throughout the region, Canada, and really abroad for his service to God, his country, and his fellow citizens. In 2003, Niagara Region initiated a memorial award in his name to honor a resident of Niagara who best exemplifies Roy's values and dedication to community service, a person who sees volunteerism as an integral part of their life. I now call upon Councillor Greenwood, Chair of the 2019 Adjudication Committee, to make the presentation with the assistance of Councillor Diodati, Mayor of Niagara Falls.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and councillors. It's my pleasure that I to serve on this year's T. Roy Adams Humanitarian the Year of Award Committee, and I'd like to express my appreciation to all the committee members: Jack McKiernan, our citizen appointee, George Dart, Councillor Peter Nicholson, Councillor Barbara Butters, and Councillor Tim Rigby. Thank you very much. They carefully reviewed the nominations for each of the outstanding candidates before deciding on this year's Humanitarian of the Year. I'd like also to thank the sponsors who took the time to submit each of this year's incredible group of nominees, and to each of the very impressive nominees. Thank you to all of your dedication, your compassion, and your willingness to help improve the lives of others in the Niagara region. Your services are invaluable, and you are an inspiration to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce that the committee has selected Dan Bauman as the 2019 recipient of the T. Roy Adams Humanitarian Award. I'd like to invite Mr. Bauman to the podium at this time. A successful Niagara business owner for more than 4 decades, Dan has made a determined effort to give back to the community that helped build his multi-million-dollar wholesale produce business. Dan has been involved with Tender Wishes, Special Olympics, and the Greater Niagara General Hospital, and is known to sponsor almost any minor sports club that involves children, earning him a spot in the City of Niagara Falls Sports Wall of Fame. He's also the founder of Heartland Forest, Nature's Experience, a fully accessible nature preserve situated within 93 acres of Carolinian forest on Kaler Road in Niagara Falls. The creation of Heartland Forest was inspired by Dan's granddaughter, Sydney Berciel, who was born with a rare brain disorder in 1997. As a result of her adversities, Dan was determined to provide a peaceful, accessible, and inclusive place to enjoy nature. With a mandate of preservation, education, and accessibility, Heartland Forest opened its doors in 2004. Dan's tireless efforts to make nature accessible for all have garnered him great praise and accolades, including the Queen's Diamond Jubilee recipient, City of Niagara Falls Good Citizen of the Year Award, Patrick Cummings Award of Excellence and recognition of improving barrier-free accessibility, the Canadian National March of Dimes Award of Merit for barrier-free design, and Parks and Recreation Ontario's Innovation Award. Making a difference takes a lot of hard work, and Dan Bauman has always been the first person to roll up his sleeves and dig in. By the way, anytime you go out there, Dan's working very hard. You can't find him because he's probably out in the forest. He's without question the catalyst that rallies volunteers from all walks of life, and he does so humbly with heartfelt gratitude. Dan is an example of what ordinary people can do when they stick fast to their vision with devotion, compassion, and strength of character. He inspires others to participate, to be a pioneer of change, and to give back to the community. He's a true leader in every sense of the word, and the impact of his work and benefits generations to come. Please join me in a round of applause for Dan Bauman, the 2019 T. Roy Adams Humanitarian Award of the Year. Dan Bauman. I just want to sneak in one more word for myself. In 2011 and 12, I was one of the 12 women in a tent. And as you may or may not know, we did scrounge a lot of stuff for Project Share. We did a lot of work. And we were standing at Oaks Park. It was around 7 o'clock at night. And that's where we had our tent for 5 days. And I could hear all these bells, and I'm thinking, and whistles. And I'm thinking, gee, the fire hall is just across the way. It's not a fire whistle. I don't think it's a fire whistle. Looked up Morrison Street, and there is the train coming down Morrison Street with Dan at the helm in the engine, pulling behind him 6 cars full of food, potatoes, carrots, onions, you name it, and all of it went to Project Share. We were so grateful, and this is just a little snippet of what Dan's all about, giving back to the community and to the people that need. So thank you, Dan, again.
Thank you.
Now I'll let Jim Diodati speak.
Okay, thanks very much. So it gives me a lot of pleasure. I've known Dan for a long, long time, and he worked with my father for many years. My dad was in the produce business as well for a long, long time. So I've got some notes here I'd like to read through that I worked together with my staff to kind of put together. I didn't want to leave anything out. It's very difficult to encapsulate so much of what this man has done and the impact that he's had in our community within a few minutes. Dan's commitment over the years, developing Heartland Forest. Has everybody had a chance to visit Heartland Forest? If you haven't, please bring your kids or your grandkids and check it out. It is unbelievable. And what's exciting, not just to see these kids that have accessibility problems or other challenges in life, to see the smile on their face when they can pull a fish out of the water or hold a snake or see the wildlife, but to see the parents and the caregivers sigh of relief when they could see their kids so happy and on accessible swings and different play structures. And that's the kind of stuff. And Dan's got this ability to reach out to developers, people that own backhoes, to come in and help them dig things and fill ponds and put fish into them. And he's just got this ability, you can't say no. He was able to get other people to give land to this project. He had this vision, this idea. And I remember when I first ran for office, he told me about it. And I thought, either this is the craziest thing I've ever heard, or it's the most brilliant endeavor that I've heard taking place in Niagara Falls. And clearly, based on tonight's award, this guy is just an unbelievable man. The result is this cherished gem, Heartland Forest. Matter of fact, the City Council of Niagara Falls, we even renamed the street after what he did out there, because we wanted to make sure in perpetuity that anyone that went on their GPS to find it would know exactly where they were going. Heartland Forest is open to all, families, people with special needs, anyone looking for somewhere to enjoy the great outdoors and natural surroundings. If you just want to get away and volunteer, it's a great place to go. And I can attest to what Dan's done. It's a vision bigger than himself. And when people think of Dan, they associate him with giving and with his selfless approach. He came to Canada in 1965 with nothing, from Holland. He tells me he was the black sheep of his family, so he was running away, so to speak. He stayed in St. Catharines with family of his till he developed his business, Dan's Produce, hugely successful. And he took on this passionate project, Heartland Forest, and he's been giving. And to tell you what kind of guy he is, we a couple years ago celebrated his 50th anniversary in business with all of his past and current employees and everybody that you met. How long you been working with Dan? Oh, 25 years, 35 years, 45 years. People have been with this guy. It's like a family. And he said, I start with good people. And that's why I build my business and I treat them well. And in return, they treat Dan well. And here's Dan giving to his community. And here we are tonight, the community acknowledging and giving back to Dan. Well, Dan's philosophy has been very successful in creating what he's done at Heartland Forest. And to know Dan is to love him. He's always putting smiles on kids' faces, and Barbara attested to the fact that he drives this train around town. And that's not a real train, obviously, it's like a choo-choo train. And he rings the bell, he does the horn, and usually there's a bunch of kids and all the carts down the back. Or as Barbara said, I know myself and Councillor Gale, we did the 10 Men in a Tent as well, similar event to what the ladies did. And again, Dan every day showing up with food, pallets and pallets, thousands, tens of thousands of pounds of food that we would give to Project Share and to people who needed it. He just gives and gives. Matter of fact, every long weekend too in the summer, July 1st, Canada Day, he does a big fireworks show with some of his neighbors. He does it for everybody, this big show, and he has a contest with one of his other neighbors who can have the better fireworks over the Welland River. And he comes again with his train, and they've got food for everybody, and he just shares everything that he has with everybody around him. I say he's our very own version of Walt Disney. Yeah, and we'd like to thank you, Dan, for your vision, your drive, your community service. It's established a legacy that'll continue to inspire generation for years to come. And I can't think of a more deserving person in the community for this amazing award. So on behalf of all of us here today, Dan, I'm proud that I get to read just a small snippet of your great accomplishments. So thank you very much.
Very few. I wrote it down, but can't read my own half Dutch, half English writing. Thank you, Chairman Bradley, all of you, Council, for the honor of this award. I'm very honored. I want to thank Rita Meyer, who nominated me with our team, who I sponsored well over 20 years ago in the Tender Wishes Foundation. That's how I got to know her, making children their wish come true. And that's how I knew Rita, and she's the one who nominated me. So I'm very thankful. I'm also thankful to my family, all the volunteers, sponsors, donors. I couldn't do without all the help I was getting. But when you called me, Mr. Chairman, and you mentioned Roy Adams, well, my mind's starting to go. Roy Adams, and my rugby probably remembers Roy Adams very well. So do I. Because as a young Dutchman, I used to go to the Club Netherlands, yes, Black Sea Hall, Wallen Avenue. And that's where I got to know Roy Adams. And in the beginning, I was introduced to him. This is Dan, the produce man, started a business on Church Street Louth in St. Catharines at my aunt and uncle's farm. Well, I got the strangest look from him because I couldn't even speak English. But anyways, the customers I had on King Street, the Highlight and the Lancers and all the people downtown, they couldn't speak much English neither. So by the values I was brought up, work hard, be honest, we build like Jimmy said, fair business. But so I was introduced to Mayor Adams at the Black Sea Hall. And it was funny because we had our own Dutch band, the Dutch Glory Band. And all those 6-foot-tall Dutchmen blowing the tools there, I call it the Hoompa Band because I don't know how else to say it. It was a Hoompa Band. And then the little short fella, Mayor Roy Adams, was part, Mr. Rigby was part of the Dutch band. Can you believe that or not? And he had this black Dutch sailor cap and a red doohickey thing around his neck and his wooden shoes. So that's how far back I go, saying my age here, but it was funny when you called me, Mr. Bradley, Chairman Bradley, when you said Roy Adams, because I tell you, I knew him, and then went into conversation on so what was so important that the Club Netherlands, and I went to many functions, many fundraisers, but of course the Canadians liberated Holland May 5th. So every year we had this special function on May the 5th and November 11th, Remembrance Day, and many in between. So, but the liberation of the Canadians at the Club Netherlands was just an amazing evening we had at that time. So. Again, because of Jimmy, I ended up hiring a bodyguard, Mr. Bradley, and I brought him tonight. And it's all Jim's fault, and Bob's, and he wants to say a few words. Adam and his family have been around me for close to 10 years, if not more. Both his parents do a lot of volunteer work, helping us, and this year, Doug is our chairman at Heartland Forest. But Adam would like to say a few words and tells us what he does at Heartland Forest, because we have many, many children like that. My friend Adam.
Welcome.
Sir Adam. Sir Adam. Okay, Adam. You okay?
Good evening. My name is Adam Douglas Kane. I'm 31 years old. I live at home with my mom and dad. I have an older brother, Terry, who is a doctor. I have a younger sister, Brianna, who works for the Whirlpool jet boats. I participate in Special Olympics to be with friends, to stay fit and healthy, and to improve my skills. I'm also so lucky to work and volunteer at Heartland Forest every week. Heartland is a great place. It is a beautiful, all-inclusive nature park. It is a place where all children and adults can come and have fun and be safe. I can share this place with all my friends. Those friends who are in wheelchairs or any other challenges they may be facing in life. All activities at Heartland Forest are wheelchair accessible. The playground, the fishing pond, the treehouse, the basketball court, the mini putt, not to mention all the walking trails, the main building activities. I'm a part of the team here who work in the day program at Heartland Forest. We organize many activities during the day for a great group of adults. We do yoga, prepare snack for the staff, we do gardening, and we feed the chickens. We walk around the property learning about the many bugs and animals who live here. We learn how to take care of our environment and our world. It is a place where we can learn about so many things: crafts, woodworking, bugs, animals. We learn how to take care of our environment and our world. We learn how to recycle, reuse things. We have enjoyed lots of parties, celebrations at Heartland Forest. I would like to thank everyone who supports Heartland Forest, and I would like everyone to recognize Dan Bowman for his vision and continued support of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Good job, Adam.
Thank you so very much.
Just real quick, since, like Barb said, I've been there since 2004. Not too long ago, I had a function there, which was the best day of my life. Council member of Niagara Falls, Victor Peter was also a high school teacher at St. Mike's in Niagara Falls. He phoned to do a country western hoedown for people who are less fortunate with disabilities. So of course my wife and I sponsored it right away, done. I had 184 of those kids, from Grimsby to Foreri. It was amazing. And when the band started, we had barbecues and fun and all kinds of activities. But when the band started, it was just amazing. They brought their own band, their own music. Within 3 minutes or less, the dance floor was full. You saw the scooters rocking and the wheelchairs rocking, and the kids were doing the line dancing, rolling the floor. And I tell you, a lot of money, a lot of sweat, but that was 184 of those kids. It was just an amazing day for me as a person, giving back to the community, blessed, share, and care for others. And I see that the region, you know, you got to have a heart for people, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And so I'm also very grateful to you, Mr. Chairman, Bradley. You've been on this work for a long time, giving back to the community. So I'm very grateful in all of you here tonight, because it's like a little bit like Heartland Forest. It's all sharing and caring for others. And to me, that's very important. And in sharing with others, it's amazing. So again, I want to thank you very much. And we're on it as a family, as a team. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
No, not unless you
Okay,
want to.
folks.
And you know, he forgot to
you
mention,
much.
he's an Olympic golfer.
Oh,
yes.
I forgot to mention,
That's right.
golfer,
Golfer.
two
That's right.
silver medals in the Special Olympics
That's right.
not too long
That's
ago.
right.
Oh, yeah. Adam watches everything around there. He even toured, when you did the TV show for Cogeco, Chatty with the Daddy. Adam was his entertainer. And the Premier of Ontario was at Heartland Forest, supposed to be for 10 minutes. Adam entertained her, Mr. Bradley, for an hour and a half. And she was only supposed to be there for 10 minutes. He's, you want to come and see Heartland Forest? Just talk to Adam.
Just don't let him drive you around in the golf cart.
No.
He's a madman. Be careful.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
I
a
can't-
point of order before
Please,
Dan
Councillor
sits down.
Gale.
Dan, you and I have helped each other for over 40 years. I'm going to help you now. Identify the people in the front row there. They're your family and friends. And by the way, the first one's Doug Kane, and he's the former chief of police for the Niagara Parks. Good. Sandy's the chair.
So, yeah, Chairman, let me start on the other side. My wife Linda, and then my second daughter Anne Marie, my oldest daughter Jacqueline. My youngest one is working for the government in Ottawa, so she's not here tonight. And Doug Kane, who's this year our chairman. Doug has been regional police detective for 34 years. And then he became the chairman, the chief of police at the Niagara Parks Commission. And since he's semi-retired, I use him a lot because he's got time in his hands. And so I'm waiting for Peter's father to come into town. I'll find a job for him too. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity to meet and congratulate Dan before this evening's council meeting, and I wish to extend congratulations to him on behalf of Regional Council. His name has also been added to the large T. Roy Adams plaque that is located outside of the council chamber. And I must say as well that I believe, although I was not on council at that time, this is the first recipient who has actually done a line dance upon receiving this particular award. So thanks very much, Dan, for that. Now, there's a photographer here. So the two councillors from Niagara Falls, if the photographer may wish to go with Mr. Bowman to have a photograph taken. Is that what you look forward to? Okay. So we'll excuse you for a couple of minutes. The Niagara newspaper's photographer is here. So now we have what is, you all look forward to, I know with great anticipation, the chair's report. First of all, I would like to, there's a number of events that I attend on your behalf, and many of you attend them as well, that are worth, I think, mentioning. June was Employee Appreciation Month at the Niagara region. I was pleased to attend employee recognition barbecues held at Club Richelieu, Polonia Park, and Lipa Park, where staff enjoyed the fun, the food, and some well-deserved relaxation. From time to time, members of council have been able to join us. Congratulations to all of our awards of excellence winners and to those who were recognized for your years of service. Thank you to all staff. Your hard work does not go unnoticed. And again, members of Regional Council have attended some of these events, and I thank you for that. Mayor Redicott particularly will be interested in the next one that he and I attended, the Buffalo and Port Erie Public Bridge Authority commemoration ceremony to mark the completion of the 3-year, $100 million rehabilitation project of the Peace Bridge. These important repairs will add many more years to the lifespan of this critical crossing for the region's important cross-border traffic and economic activity. I know that Mayor Redicott was there at the time, MP Vance Badaway, former Chair Debbie Zimmerman were all in attendance on that, a number of our American friends as well, and it is going to make a significant difference. I was also pleased to join area mayors and councillors and airport officials at Niagara Central Dorothy Rungeling Airport in Pelham, where I met racers, sponsors, and organizers of the 43rd Annual Air Race Classic. The Air Race Classic is considered the epicenter of women's air racing. The race features 49 teams between 2 and 3 women and celebrates the first women's air race held in 1929, featuring famed aviator Amelia Earhart. The race started in Jackson, Tennessee on Tuesday, June 20, ended in Pelham on Wednesday, June 21, with the winners completing the trip in approximately 30 hours. And I know there are many people who are very interested in that, particularly the people from the south end of the peninsula, Councillor Butters, Councillor Steele, and Councillor Hewson, and our good friend, see who else was there, Mayor Junkin would be aware of that. So it was quite an event. I saw the good Mayor of Welland as well showing his support. Frank, thanks very much. Now, I was pleased to join Mayor Senzik and members of St. Catharines City Council at a dedication ceremony to honor former Merit resident Bill Wiley, a Lion, a school principal and city councillor. Members of Bill's family joined the celebration, where a parkette outside Sobeys Plaza on Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines was named in Bill's honor. The parkette includes a small garden area and trees lining a path that represents a section of first and second iterations of the Welland Canal, was located on that very land. On June 26, Niagara's Learning, Earning, and Parenting graduation, we call it LEAP, ceremonies were held at a Mises Banquet Center in Thorold. Congratulations to all the young parents who were recognized for their achievements. Thank you to Councillor Laura Yip for attending and representing council at that event. On the 27th of June, I attended the retirement farewell and celebration for Coletta McGrath, which was held at the 13th Street Winery. Coletta served as Quest Community Health Center's founding executive director for the past 10 years, was instrumental in helping to ensure some of our most vulnerable citizens received quality health care. On July 10th and 11th, the Honorable Francois Philippe Champagne, Canada's Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, visited Niagara. On Wednesday, July 10, to tour local infrastructure sites. His stops in Niagara included tours of St. Catharines Transit Garage, Port Colborne Waste Water Treatment Plant, and Niagara Falls Water Treatment Plant. On Thursday, I was at the breakfast sponsored by the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, and Minister Champagne was the speaker at that time. On Friday, July 12th, I attended the Foster Festival's 2019 summer season at First Ontario Arts Centre, downtown St. Catharines. Enjoyed the performance of the comedy called Hilda's Yard. And I think it's safe to say I would encourage everyone, and I know councillors who were there would agree with this, to take in the performance of the Foster Festival as it continues this summer. The entertainment is actually outstanding. And on July 20th, the St. Catharines and Regional Niagara Twinning Association will be hosting the first Wee Lemon Family Day at Burgoyne Woods Park in St. Catharines on Saturday, July 20 between 1 p.m. 8 p.m. It's to celebrate the 51-year relationship of St. Catharines and its twin city, Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. Youth soccer tournaments from 1 to 4, a Caribbean-themed event from 4 to 8. We get to learn about the life in Port-au-Prince with hands-on activities, food, and music. July 22nd, the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce will be hosting at Rockway Vineyards in St. Catharines a representation from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Clark, who will deliver the keynote address and is expected to speak to a number of housing initiatives and land use planning in Ontario. The Minister of Municipal Affairs has been in our area before. He'll be here once again. The annual AMO conference will be taking place. That's Association of Municipalities of Ontario. There are delegations that are going to be there from the 18th to the 21st of the month of August. Later on, I think that Councillor Steele and Councillor Butters may mention the Canal Days, which will be coming up, which is always a great event. I'll let them elaborate on that. I've been asked by Councillor Rigby to mention as well that the Henley Regatta, the Royal Canadian Henley Regatta, probably the largest regatta in Canada, George, would you agree with that, would be held at the Royal Canadian Henley Rowing Course. That begins actually on the Sunday, the 4th, with the Masters. The 5th is the official opening, and it goes through to the 11th for the finals. So that is certainly very interesting. A couple of sports notes for those of you who may be sports fans. I look around, I see many of them. And there are many, always tell me about these, by the way, when they're happening in your area. The Niagara River Lions have clinched a playoff berth, and we congratulate them on their inaugural season in the Canadian Elite Basketball League. They're currently in first place in the CEBL and have qualified for the playoffs. The last home game of the season is on August 1st at Meridian Center versus Guelph Nighthawks. This will be the last time in the season that the fans will get a chance to see them, because they have a tournament that takes place in Saskatoon on August 24 to 25 to complete the championship weekend. So we're very pleased that St. Catharines Junior A lacrosse team has advanced to the next round on their quest for the Minto Cup, defeated Six Nations Arrows 3-1 in the best of 5 series, and will open the next round against Burlington Chiefs in Burlington on Friday and at the Jack Gatecliff Arena on Sunday at 7 p.m. So any other notes that you wish to send along to me, please be sure to do so. Or at the conclusion of the meeting, I always ask, are there any events you'd like to tell us about? Please be sure to do so, because I know not only the members here, but people across the Niagara region are very interested in those. So I thank you very much. That is my report. And now I would tell you there are no delegations this evening. So we now move to number 10, the adoption of minutes, the council minutes of Thursday, June 20th, 2019. I call on Councillor DeZero for the motion to adopt the minutes.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution seconded by Councillor Whalen that the minutes of CL 12-2019, being the open session minutes of Regional Council meeting held on Thursday, June 20th, 2019, be adopted.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the resolution? Opposed? The motion is carried. We move to number 11, correspondence. We have a memorandum from A.M. Norio, Regional Clerk, dated July 18, 2019, respecting Supplemental Information Report, CLK 9-2019 50th Anniversary Committee, and also a memorandum from M. Wilson, Senior Project Manager, Transportation Engineering, dated July 18, 2019, respecting award of tender 2019-T-157, reconstruction of Regional Road 38, which is Martindale Road, from 4th Avenue to Barton Street in the city of St. Catharines. I'm going to call on Councillor Witteveen for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Greenwood that that the correspondence item CLC 50-2019 and CLC 51-2019 be received for information.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. 11.2 for consideration is the second progress report respecting implementation of the recommendations from the Ontario Ombudsman report, referred to as Press Pause. I call on Councillor Campion for the motion.
Thanks, Chair. Moved by myself and Councillor Yip that report CLK 11-2019, dated July 18, 2019, respecting second progress report respecting implementation of recommendations from the Ontario Ombudsman report, Press Pause, be received and circulated to the Ontario Ombudsman.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. We now move to committee reports, the ones that took place in open session. I call on Councillor Edgar for the motion. This is regarding Procedural Bylaw Review Committee, the minutes from Monday, June 17, 2019. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Barbara Butters that report PBLRC 2-2019, being the open session minutes of the Procedural Bylaw Review Committee meeting held on Monday, June 17, 2019, be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Any discussion? If not, Councillor Yip. Anybody who wishes to discuss this can press the appropriate button and it'll be indicated on the screen. Councillor Yip.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'd like to lift minute item 5.2, given the decision to increase councillors' gross remuneration to offset the municipal officers' expense allowance, and also because I don't see the amendments we made at the June Procedural Bylaw Review Committee meeting, I'd move that we refer the expense policy back to corporate services to make further edits.
Does that require a seconder? Do you have a seconder for that motion? Seconder is Councillor Butters. Discussion? No discussion on this? Okay, all in favor? Yes, point of order. Councillor Redicott.
I'm not exactly sure what this is and what it is that's being accomplished. Can we have an explanation?
Clerk.
Okay. So the expense policy that we initiated some edits on is back to be approved in these minutes, but there are a number of edits that we made at procedural bylaw that were not included in these, including things like making newsletters in ineligible expense, that sort of thing. So I'd like to refer it back.
Any other discussion? Councillor Gale.
Chair, before we vote on this, can you put on the screen what we're voting on, please?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gale. We will do that. The motion is to refer it back to the committee,
To corporate services.
the Corporate Services Committee. You now have it on your screen. Call a vote now. No discussion. Okay, I don't see any other clarification, so all in favor? Opposed? You want to go to the button? We're asked for a recorded vote, I see. We're going to ask for a recorded vote, so we will have a recorded vote.
The vote is open.
She says there's some changes that weren't recorded.
The motion is defeated. See, 13 yes, 17 no, motion defeated. Councillor Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just then a clarification then. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Height. And I'm short, so it's a good thing. So with this, and Councillor Yip actually had some good points that we don't actually have some of those pieces of the puzzle that were talked about at that particular committee. So it sounds like we're going to be approving this, but we're not exactly sure what we're approving at this particular point in time. So maybe either...
And I'm just actually going to stand on a point of order because I still have the floor.
Councillor Yip.
So we'll have to make some edits right here then, the ones that we discussed at procedural bylaw, at least for sure. At procedural bylaw review committee, which is where this expense policy was referred back to at the last, we went to corporate services, we referred to procedural bylaw. We asked for 4.8D, promotional material related to regional business, including newsletters, be made an ineligible expense. We also asked that 4.9E, being the notation about ineligible conference expenses for mayors, include not just AMO and FCM, but any and all conferences that are not specifically and only related to the business of the region. So the mayors, therefore, would be attending conferences on at the expense of their municipality rather than at the region. 4.8F, a maximum of 1 ticket for a member when representing and bringing greetings or speaking on behalf of Niagara Region at an event of a public nature. 4.11D can be removed because we made the edit to 4.8D about promotional material related to regional business. And further, we didn't discuss this at procedural bylaw, but a further edit that given that due to regulations set out in AODA, that we cannot post receipts to the website, I move that we include all of the receipt details, including things like names of people involved in meetings, which is outlined in the expense policy, on the expense list, and that we make such original documentation available to the public or media without the need for FOI requests and fees.
Councillor Height, I see your name on the screen.
Yes, this seems like a lot of major changes or items that were not recorded maybe properly. I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know what went on. But when we were dealing with this months ago, I'm not in favor of any councillor around this horseshoe submitting their own newsletter at the expense of the taxpayers, period. And if they want to do their own newsletter, they can take it out of their own dime. Anything that comes from the region should be messaging from the region and not from a specific councillor. So I'm really against even having that part of this. And if this is still included, I'm going to vote against anything tonight until this is cleaned up, because I can recall what took place last time. A councillor or a number of councillors took information that our staff had been working on and spun it and made it look like their newsletter, their information, and suggested it was a regional message just by the nature of the beast. And if a councillor wants to do something individually, God bless them. You have the rights to do anything you want to a point. But the region of Niagara and our literature should be stamped with region of Niagara and approved by us, or through the chair's office, something going out on our behalf and not as an individual. So on that specific item, I was against it when we spoke to it months ago. And if this is still included, I'm going to vote against this until we clean it up properly.
Councillor Zalepa.
Yeah, so you know, I'm not in favor of moving it forward tonight, but I think that what I understood, and I think I have a question perhaps to the clerk, is that this report is attached to CSD 31, which had a list of items, and my understanding would be that in principle, we would kind of move this forward. It would go back to the committee to be flushed out, and then a full policy would be brought to this council. That's the process. So I think that's a good process. That means we were not deciding tonight. So is that what we're doing here, Madam Clerk? Perhaps we can get clarity.
I'll ask the clerk.
Through you, Chair. So all this recommendation is doing is taking the amendments that were made at the Procedural Bylaw Review Committee, authorizing staff to put them in the draft policy, which will be sent to council for approval when you approve this motion, if you do so.
So therefore, then we'll get a kick at all the things we don't like at that point. So I'm in favor of the report. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just a point of clarification, though. The amendments were not included in, the amendments we made at procedural bylaw were not included in this draft.
They are, you'll note that it says it's the draft as amended. In the minutes, the amendments are there, and they have been included in the draft that will come back to council.
Okay, you see on your screen what we're voting on. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now I'm going to call a vote on the balance of the report, committee report. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So next will be the Budget Review Committee of the Whole, I believe, 12.2. I call on Councillor Zalepa for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution seconded by Councillor Butters. The report BRC OTW 6/2019, being the open session minutes of the Budget Review Committee of the Whole, held Thursday, June 20th, be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Discussion. Councillor Sendzik. Sorry, Councillor Furtick first, followed by Councillor Sendzik.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not very often I get a chance to speak before Councillor Sendzik. Got me all shook up here now. Mr. Chair, in reference to CSD 40-2019, there's an item in there that it's called strategic initiatives. It seems to put, again, I say, putting the cart before the horse, that the airports are in our estimate to come out of the 2020 budget. It says 2020 estimate of $2.2 million. Is it not my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that this council has not approved the airports? And I guess my question is that it's included in the $16.5 million that we're looking at in this budget report. So I'd just like some clarification why it's in there, please.
Okay, I will call on the clerk. No, I will call on the Commissioner of Finance.
Thanks, Chair. That whole table talks about various initiatives that have been raised since the beginning of the year, or even items that have been transferred from the 2019 budget that were utilized or put forward to this year. I think why that chart is there, and if you recall in the budget meeting of the whole, I had indicated these are there to give you a context of some of the challenges that we're facing. The list is pretty prescriptive of all the things that have been recommended that we consider in the budget. They're not approved. Councillor Furtick, you're quite correct in the sense that there is ongoing discussions that are happening between staff of the municipality as well as staff of the municipalities that operate the two airports, and we'll be coming forward to that. But this list is there to provide council with a context of the challenges that will be facing. I think the quote I used was that every night is budget night, and every committee at the region is budget committee, because there's many items that get forwarded to us to consider as we develop the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Sendzik, oh sorry, Furtick wants to continue.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, on the same report, we have the GO station infrastructure where it shows 40 million, It says to be determined. It's my understanding there's only 34 million left because 6 million have been expended. So I am assuming that when we talk about the 2020 estimate budget, that 40 million or 34 million that's left is not to be coming out of this year's budget or 2020 budget. Because it's my understanding it was already allocated in 2016 and 2017, the total of the 40 million. So I'm assuming the 40 million's in the bank and not going to come out of our budget when we look at budget deliberations for 2020. Is that correct?
Commissioner Harrison?
The $40 million that was approved in previous budgets is available for the GO project. You'll be receiving at the next committee meetings more fulsome discussion of what is being proposed to move the GO file forward. And that money, some of that money will be asked of the committees to move projects forward. There will be no additional monies on top of the $40 million that was previously approved.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Perdick, you've completed it. Councillor Sendzik.
Thank you. And through the chair, I think I'd like to address in the minutes the first one on the MPI and then also the rate of increase for water, wastewater. So I'm always speaking against the use of MPI and just being able to do some research with our own team at the City of St. Catharines. We do the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and what we found is, and through the Director of Finance at the city, is that a lot of municipalities are moving away from MPI. It's not exactly a best understood measurement for budgeting a municipality around, and I'm uncomfortable moving in that direction when municipalities are actually moving away from it. There are a couple in Canada that use it, but there's a lot of municipalities in the country and only a couple are using it. I would rather, as a councillor that's familiar with the CPI, follow the CPI as the measurement that we follow. Our residents follow that. Other businesses that are in the sector follow it. I would be voting against this and bringing back the CPI as the measurement for what the prospective rate of increase would be. So that's on number one. And then on number 5, I think we should also be going with CPI on that, at least showing council what the consumer price index would be for water, wastewater. Again, I know there's a lot of pressures facing the region, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the ability to pay for residents across the region. And being mindful of that, I would rather look at a CPI for the water, wastewater, and also follow that formula for the overall preparation of the budget. So I'll look to the chair and through the chair to the clerk. If I were to lift 1 and 5 and ask for those to be voted on separately, that would be the approach that I think I would like to take. Amend it, and I would like to amend it. Amend number 1 to go CPI, and then number 5 is to follow CPI, at least to give us an idea, because this is building the budget. So if we find at the rate of inflation that there is way too many gaps, it's up to us to also work with the budget committee and staff to move it up. But I'd rather start at what would be the affordability rate of the average taxpayer in the region of Niagara.
Thank you, Councillor Sendzik. Clerk, do you have any comment? Because Councillor Sendzik made reference to the clerk. If you're moving the amendment, you will need a seconder. I see Councillor Campion as a seconder. Further discussion, Councillor Redekop.
Thank you, Chair. So have we removed item 5.1, sub-items 1 and 5 from this package?
Clerk.
So what we'd be dealing with now is the amendment to 1 and 5, which I can put up on the screen in a moment.
Okay. Do they have to be lifted from the package in order to do that?
It's done
That's
already.
done.
Yes.
That was my question. So I agree. I don't support the municipal price index. I don't think it's sustainable for the people that we serve. I think we ought to be trying much harder to find ways that we can achieve what we require in terms of providing services and infrastructure to our residents, and bearing in mind what it is that they can afford going forward. So I agree with the comments made by Councillor Senzik, and I will vote in favor of his amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would ask that we have a response from perhaps Mr. Harrison on his opinion of what has been suggested here.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Harrison.
Sure. You're talking two different things when you're talking affordability and transparency. This was discussed at the Budget Committee. If you look at the MPI calculation, it's a more reflective predictor. And Councillor Senzik's quite right. It's a tool that's used to develop the budget. It's not the final landing spot. It's to develop the budget. And it's more, one of the things I heard as a fairly newcomer here is that people wanted a more transparent budget process. The MPI reflects the actual costs that the region incurs as opposed to the CPI. The CPI is a basket of goods that everybody is totally understandable. That's quite correct. However, it's not reflective of the heavy weighting of labor costs, particularly in some of the ABCs that we have, and it's not reflective of the construction costs and various other drivers of our business. The second thing is that while there has been, it's not universally adopted amongst other municipalities, there has been adoption from new municipalities. There are significant numbers that are being using it. The municipalities that have moved away from using it, you have to look at the reasons why they have moved away. And certainly, some of that would be related to the lack of understanding of what it reflects. It doesn't account for revenue changes different than inflation, but this is basically a calculation that's used on the base. Some of the expenses that we face, particularly in the labor costs, are above CPI, and when they're a heavily weighted component of the entire operating expenses, it's more reflective of that. At the end of there are other factors that are taken into account, particularly our rigorous use of the actuals in the preparation of the budget. The region performs, a few years ago, there was a rigorous improvement in the reporting on the quarterly basis of the financial statements. Our financial team is embedded throughout the organization, and we have a better predictive value of where we would land. And as a result, it's not just, I think it's erroneous to consider that we would just apply the MPI to last year's budget and come up with this year's budget. It's a significantly rigorous process. And it's intended, at the end of the day, it's intended to reflect what the inflationary pressures are on the base expenses. So our staff have done a significant amount of research on this and believe that it's a more appropriate methodology to do the budget planning. Hopefully that's a response.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to speak out in favor of the amendment as proposed by Councillor or Mayor Senzik. I understand the logic with the use of MPI. I understand it's a good predictor of municipality costs, and municipality costs are different from the basket of goods that a consumer may incur. But municipalities, I believe, are moving away from the MPI, and while the MPI, I think, might be good for context, it might be good for us to know where it is. I do believe budget guidance should be set using the CPI approach. This is the one that, from my research, most municipalities have undertaken. It's what we've used in the past here at the region. It's what we've used last budget. We're familiar with that approach. We're familiar with the budget preparations using CPI. I believe it gives greater transparency to the taxpayer as well. It's easier to compare what we've done in prior budgets. The taxpayer can look on Statistics Canada and see what CPI is. And I think it's helpful. We have to be mindful of what is the taxpayer's cost, and CPI provides us with that benchmark. So I'm in favor of budget preparations with the CPI approach, like we've always done, like we've done in the past, and as what's being proposed by Mayor Senzik.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zalepa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm in favor of having a budget process that gets us to a better quality conversation around what we want to prioritize our spending on. And I really thought that this recommendation, I think, gets us there in a more open manner, because I think what we need to really do is ask staff to come back eventually at our work group with the best that they can to show what it would cost us to put the programs on the table, and then all of us will have to debate as to what programs are going to stay based on the right amount of money that our taxpayers can afford. I think it's a mistake to build a budget where your assumptions are weak, because you end up with a weak document. And then you end up with, and all due respect to my fellow councillors, but yeah, they used it in the past. And I think their budgets were weak. In fact, we saw problems with the fact that, trying to drive budgets below inflationary targets have caused us grief on water, where we have a 10-year plan on water that says 5.15%, because otherwise it's underwater. It's not, the water's not getting through the pipes. So I think it's a big mistake to live in a fallacy where let's set a really lower target and we'll be happy with that. And maybe we don't get into the heavy conversations where we actually have to say, this has to go and this can stay, which I think we need to have. That's conversations council has to have. So I think let's get to the proper numbers. Let's give the staff the tools to put together the numbers that we need then to debate. And I think that this does it. So I guess I won't support the amendment by that. So thank you.
Councillor Height.
Yes, I'll speak in favor of the amendment. Whether it be MPI, CPI, whether we pull a number out of the hat and say it's 1%, regardless of what that number is going to be, staff are going to come forward with a recommendation, and they might come forward and suggest if we do CPI, we must cut services. That's going to be our decision. And if it's MPI, it might be at a higher rate, and then we're going to say, well, that's over the CPI, so let's cut services. So I have no problem with them coming forward with using the Consumer Price Index. When I heard from staff saying it's more transparent, it is as transparent as we want to be in a budget. It doesn't matter whether it's an MPI, CPI, we're dealing with it publicly, we're going to be voting on it publicly, we're going to be debating it publicly. That's as transparent as it can be. And on other years, we've had people come, whether it be the chamber, industry, come and speak to us about whatever the inflation rate is or what we're going to anticipate the rate's going to be, and speak to us, and they have every opportunity. So regardless of MPI or CPI, they're the same, they're very transparent. I can understand where staff are looking for the MPI, because that number is probably going to be higher, which will then be easier for staff to come forward with a budget more in line with MPI than maybe CPI. Well, if they can't come forward with a good number at the CPI level, we're going to have to make that tough decision to raise taxes above CPI, and that's what our job is. And as the staff made the comment about every night is budget night, Larry Tuffert, former CAO of the city of St. Catharines, used to tell us that every Monday night when we make a decision, whether it be June or whether it be in January, it adds to the budget. So when we talk about the airport or any of these items that let's put this on our wish list, whether it be more services, It adds to the budget, and at budget night, we've got to bite the bullet and say, do we accept it or not? So I'm in favor of consumer price index. It's more of affordable. It will be more explainable to the taxpayers because that's what they understand and see. They don't know what the MPI is. They've never seen the MPI, or they probably haven't seen the MPI. They live on what my old age pension's going up, or Canada pension, or whatever pensions are on the seniors in the community. That's what they know. And I'd like to be fairer to them. So I'm in favor of the amendment.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Find it interesting. Water and wastewater is one of these areas that we have to approach with caution, with making sure that we're doing what's right within the water, wastewater systems. This is one of the areas that when we go and have our education, we know and understand, particularly with water, that we have legal obligations that are going on. I kind of agree with Councillor Zalepa. I mean, one way or the other, we need to have the real figures out in front of us to know and understand what it is that's going to cost to upgrade these systems. We went through a budget process this past year where we found out, for all intents and purposes, for years, we have been undervaluing. We have been coming in with 0% increases. We've been coming in with artificially low water and sewer rates. It's been great for the municipalities. You know, Lord love them, I spent 18 years on Lincoln Council thanking the region for coming back with a value low enough that we didn't have to do some really strange adjustments. But we need to be realistic on what we're doing. So I support staff on what it is that they're doing with this. Thank you.
Any other speakers? If not, we're going to vote on the amendment first, which deals with 1 and 5.
Point of clarification to.
Clarification for
to the clerk.
Councillor Sendzik.
A, B, and C, what it says up there, that would be changed if this amendment is approved, correct?
Okay. We'll have a vote on this. All in favor? The amendment? Somebody asked. Okay, we have a recorded vote.
The vote is open.
The amendment has carried. I would now like to call a vote on the motion as amended. Is it going to be hands, or would someone like a recorded vote? Recorded? Oh, we have some speakers again. Okay, we have Councillor Senzik's off, so it's Councillor Redekop. Your name appears on there. Councillor Nicholson? No. Councillor Hewson?
Sorry, I should have declared a conflict of interest with regard to the line item for the Brock Link partnership worth 1.5 million because I have an employment relationship with Brock.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zalepa? No. Councillor Height? No. And Councillor Foster? No.
Now, call the vote on the motion as amended.
I will now call the vote on the motion as amended. Does anybody want a recorded vote or just another vote? Nobody's asked for a recorded? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And now you need to call the vote on the balance of the budget.
We'll now call a vote on the balance of the Budget Review Committee minutes. All in favor? Okay. Anyone look for a clarification? All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The next is the Audit Committee, and it's the minutes from Monday, June 24, 2019. I call on Councillor Whalen for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution before me, moved by myself, second by Councillor Bilsma, that the report AC 4-2019, being the open and closed session minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on Monday, June the 24th, be received and recommendations contained herein be approved. Can I pull item 5 and have that voted on separately?
You can have that. I think the clerk would agree that item 5 can be voted on separately. Any discussion? Councillor Greenwood.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to pull, oops, there we go. Item AC-C22 and vote on that separately too, please. Is that the same one? Oh.
Okay. Discussion? Councillor Greenwood is discussion. Councillor Furtick.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask a question in reference to the financial statements for the NPCA. There seems to be accounts receivable only in the amount of $278,000. I thought that the city of Hamilton owed NPCA, what was it, 1.2, 1.4 million dollars? I'm just wondering why it's not showing up in the financial statements. I would assume that it was billed last year, which is 2018, so it should have reflected in the financials.
Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to call the vote on this first, and then we will deal with that. I'll come back to Councillor Furtick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, all in favor? On your screen? Opposed? We may need a, anybody want a recorded vote on that because it's hard to determine.
Mr. Chair, can I just have some clarification on what we're voting for right now?
Through you, Chair. Minute item 5.1 was lifted from the Audit Committee minutes. The motion is on the floor, and that is what you are voting on right now.
So, Mr. Chair, just can we have more detail on what on this issue here? Because I know there was quite a lengthy discussion last meeting in regards to this. So before we vote on it, I just want to know. I know there was items or information that the Audit Review Committee was asking for, and I'm curious to know if they received it. So if you can give me some information on it, please.
The clerk?
Through you, Chair. The submission from the former councillor was included with the Audit Committee minutes. It will be as part of your package. AC-C23 is the number.
Any other speakers?
Through you, Chair, sorry, just to clarify, it's actually attached to the back of the minutes. So if you look at the minutes from that meeting, you will see the submission.
I'm sorry, Miss. I just can't find it yet. Can you give me a few minutes before?
You have clarification he's looking for?
Can you just give me some clarification on what was requested and?
Through you, Chair, what was requested was reimbursement for a conflict of interest opinion that was sought. It was not part of the expense policy. That's not a covered expense. It was submitted for reimbursement and consideration by the Audit Committee.
Okay, thank you. But I'm just going through my notes here. So something that was requested from the Audit Committee that wasn't received in the past, but apparently was received at the last meeting. Can you just go through that with council, please?
So former Councillor Grenier provided us a short presentation at the Audit Committee meeting and subsequently submitted his about a 2-page summation of why he's requesting reimbursement for the expense.
All right, so I guess my question is, last meeting, the reason why the audit review was not paying a certain individual was because they were waiting for information. And so this is the information they were waiting for, is why they needed to, is that clarification? Because last meeting I asked, why are we not paying this individual yet? And what information are we waiting for? And I didn't get a clear answer at the time. So I'm assuming that from what you're stating now is why we needed to reimburse the individual? Is that what the information we're waiting for?
We were waiting for, the audit committee was waiting for clarification from the former counselor on the details of the expense. He submitted that information. It was approved at audit committee for reimbursement, and now it's here at council for approval.
Anything further, Councillor Kiokio?
So I guess the question, just to review this, just to go back, and because I've had a lot of questions on this issue, is was the process, was it, who's at fault here? Has he done what he needed to do? Is it because maybe we implemented something a little later than when he submitted his amount? The amount that he submitted, the lawyers, I mean, it's $6,800. To me, that seems like a substantial amount of money for that we need to pay for someone who was accused of something that, okay, maybe he got off, but I guess some clarification through you or maybe our legal staff.
The CAO has
I mean,
clarification.
it was quite a discussion last meeting. I'm surprised no one's just saying anything in regards to this, and we're just going to vote on it without discussion. So maybe, and I wasn't at the meeting, and I wasn't at the presentation. So please give us an overview of what transpired, I guess.
CAO?
Before I make my decision.
CAO?
Through you, Chair. So I'll try to help with just a summary of what took place. So the challenge with all of this was the lack of information being provided, going back to the previous council, previous audit committee. The previous council's audit committee had approved the expense subject to getting background information. They seemed to be satisfied. They were willing to reimburse this expense, but they wanted background information. When it came forward to this council's audit committee, we still did not have authorization from the former councilor to provide that information. The information that was requested by the previous council and by this referral back by this council was provided by the former councilor at the audit committee. Essentially, it was the nature of his claim, the timing or the chronology sequence of the claim relative to our expense policy, and also he described indications or advice that he received from the former CAO that he should take that approach in terms of the legal advice and the seek reimbursement from the council. I believe that in a nutshell is what he described and is reflective in that summation as well.
When you say the current CAO, is that Carmen D'Angelo? Is that?
That's correct. The councilor referred to him.
Councilor Villela?
Again, just clarification. And I'm going to just take it for granted, I suppose, that the audit committee was satisfied with what was brought forward to them, and therefore is why it's been approved. But still, I don't understand what it was that was particularly missing or what the delay was. So to you, Mr. Tripp, are you saying that it was not previously approved, that it was pending something?
CAO?
Through you, Chair, I believe I understood the question. It was approved subject to the receipt of the detail. In my opinion, that detail was provided by the former councillor at this last audit committee.
Okay, so you're satisfied that everyth's been accepted that's needed to be accepted?
I'm satisfied that what was requested was provided.
Was requested. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Butters?
Thank you, Chair Bradley. Maybe somebody could explain to me that, and if I have this wrong, please correct me, but back in November of 2017, that policy changed to not permit conflict of interest stuff to be eligible expense. Is that correct?
CA or clerk?
Through you, Chair. So previous to November of 2017, there was no expense policy for counselors. And you are correct, the policy that was put in place and approved in November of 2017 did have a provision that any legal costs related to personal conflict of interest opinions are ineligible.
Okay, thank you. So this expense was incurred after that went into effect. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we have a policy that went into effect in November of 2017. Then we have this expense that is submitted after that policy was passed by the regional council, correct?
Clerk?
Through you, Chair, that is correct.
So maybe somebody on the audit committee can explain to me why this is now an acceptable expense, when clearly, you know, Mr. Grenier sat on that regional council. What I understand was that it was a very good discussion on expense policy before it was accepted in November of 2017. There were recorded votes. He wasn't one that I understand voted against any of those changes. So I'm really at a loss as to why now that would be an eligible expense when clearly it runs against the policy that was put in place by the former council.
Yeah, Councillor Campion is next, but Councillor Whalen is going to answer this question as the chair of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why that I asked to bring forward tonight, there were 6 of us at that audit committee meeting. We got the information we needed, so which was approved to come back for approval at this committee of the whole. So that was the idea of why I'm asking it to be pulled separately tonight, so that everybody can have an opinion on this as opposed to just 6 of us.
Thank you.
Can I?
Councillor Butters, you want to continue?
Well,
I'm going to
thank you for
Councillor
the
Campion.
explanation. I really appreciate the explanation, but from what I understand of the chronology of this, there's no way that I would support paying almost $7,000 to this expense. There's just no way. Thank you.
Councillor Campion.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think this has gone back to audit, is it the second or third time, with the same result coming back. So the audit committee is established, or I guess through the rules, the expense, any expense could go back to the audit committee at any point for them to review it and come up with a ruling to decide if they're going to support it or not. It's up to this council to decide if we want to support the recommendation coming from the audit committee. I think one of the issues that has been pointed out is that if you look at the expense policy, whatever it's called. Anyway, if you look at 4.9 in covered under the expense policy for legal expenses. So if you look at that, there are a bunch of different things. Some can happen and some are not allowable. The concept is that perhaps when the counselor in question, who's been named, but I've just referred to him as a counselor, was under the impression that there was potential of a code of conduct complaint coming forward. So if that was the case, based on the information that I've seen, and certainly there has been some legal advice to that effect, that you know there was some sort of threat, and I really don't know who it was from, but there was some sort of threat, and it could have resulted in a complaint on the code of conduct, as opposed to getting legal expense or legal expenses to get legal advice to find out if he personally had a conflict of interest on that. So based on that assumption, if you go to 4A, it refers to legal costs arising from or in any way related to a complaint under the code of conduct are eligible expenses. So if you look at it from that perspective, that would be an eligible expense under those rules. So I just want to bring that forward. You know, I think the audit committee's done their job. They've gotten all the information, and they made a determination, and I'm certainly supporting that determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bilsma.
I'm just a little concerned in terms of optics and I respect the chairman, his explanation for why he pulled it. But I also want to make sure that in terms of principle, when a subcommittee does its legwork, and as Mayor Campion pointed out, Councillor Campion pointed out, audit committee has looked at this 3 times and sent the recommendation forward, that we, while it's within our right to do so, you know, when they're sending us a clear message that in their opinion this is a legitimate expense. I understand that there's some uniqueness to it, but what I don't want to see happening is if people at the committee level, quote unquote, may not vote with the majority, that they come here, pull items so that they can have the discussion here. I find that to be just a little bit problematic. When I see the committees largely operating like the council as a whole. Sometimes you win in the vote, sometimes you lose in the vote, but when we leave the room, we more or less have to speak with one voice. And I see a little bit of a challenge here. Maybe I'm missing the point, or maybe I'm not understanding this completely. But you know, the work, the muscle, the meat and potatoes discussions happens at the committee level. And when we come to this body, I think that we have to understand that the people who are passionate about this at the beginning of the term, who signed up for these particular committees, engaged in the discussions, got the information, and made a wise decision. I trust the councillors that were on there. Then they come here. I'm just very, very conflicted when a committee that I couldn't, it's not that I don't care to be on it, but I had other interests. So I would appreciate the same when I, as a member of the planning committee, come forward with a discussion that we had. It was vigorous perhaps, and then it comes to this council. I kind of take issue with the fact that all of a sudden we got to open up all the cans of worms. We did that. If it was important to you, get on the planning committee or get on the audit committee. Audit committee has made a recommendation. I think as a council as a whole, we should respect the work that they did. They have announced very clearly that they received the information that was asked for, and they made the subsequent decision. And I just find it difficult that we're opening up all these cans of worms again here at this council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Ultimately, all the minutes of the committee have to be approved ultimately by the council as a whole. I think that's why people raise it, is that we do still have to approve that on the night of the full council. So members are entitled to do as they wish, but thank you very much for your contribution, Councillor. Councillor Greenwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Each and every one of us at some point may have a problem and have a conflict of interest or some other complaint towards us. We don't go running to a lawyer before an adjudication comes down, or before a decision comes down from either the ombudsman or whomever is going to be making that decision. And that's what happened in this case. I had a similar situation with myself. I sought legal advice from Donna Pascoe here at the region in risk management. She said, no, Barb, you don't go to a lawyer till the decision comes down, then we'll deal with it. And that, to me, was sound advice for me. But to go to a lawyer at a cost of almost $700 an hour, and before the decision comes back, and the decision came back that he was exonerated. So, to me, that was not using common sense. And for that reason, I will not be supporting paying someone paying a legal fee of $7,000.
Thank you, Councillor Redekop.
Thank you, Chair. So I am on the audit committee. I didn't vote in favor of this resolution. And the reason I didn't vote in favor of it was because, and I wasn't consistent because previously I had voted in favor of it, but then we had more information that needed to come forward. The information that came forward actually contradicted what I had initially understood, which was this happened at a time when, or before the policy had changed, and because the policy changed, it was no longer reimbursable. That isn't what happened, as we've been told by the clerk. There was no policy, then there was a policy. The policy would provide that this isn't eligible, and then there was the seeking of legal advice. What we heard at the audit committee was a rather convoluted presentation by the individual as to how he got into this situation and why he sought legal advice. And if one reads the legal opinion, it's hard to imagine that there was really any substance to the concern. I'm sorry that everybody doesn't go to a lawyer when they're in a predicament, because that would be great for business, and I don't want to declare a conflict on this particular issue. But the lawyer that was consulted is a very well-known lawyer who does a lot of this type of work and accordingly charges for the value of his services. So I would guess that he's got 10 hours into this particular piece of work, and that's what he's worth. We were told that the counselor was told by the CAO of the time that he should consult a lawyer. I don't know if that's true. The CAO at the time isn't available for comment. But it's clear that this is not eligible under our policy unless it goes to the audit committee and the audit committee approves it under one of those catch-all provisions in Section 4 that Mayor Campion has referred to. I didn't think that was justifiable in view of the facts as they were revealed, as I now understand them, as they actually occurred. And the chronology is outlined in the report. It's quite clear that these services were sought after the policy was implemented. They wouldn't ordinarily be covered. That's why I didn't support it, and that's why I'm not going to support it here tonight. And that's my right, because as you said, Chair, we approve all committee decisions here in council. And I'm not about to accept, I'm not about to accept every recommendation that comes from every committee simply because they did the heavy lifting. I have opinions on some of these things, and since I can't express them at home when my wife is there, I'll express them here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Height.
Yes, I wasn't going to speak either until I heard that we should be rubber stamping committee meetings. I won't rubber stamp anything, whether from staff or committee, whether I sit on the committee or not. If I have an issue with a decision and I sit on a committee, I'll stand up and let the public know that I'm not in favor of it. When we found out about this, I went further and I contacted our clerk to ask about Integrity Commissioner reports, because I was assuming this was in the defense of an Integrity Commissioner report that suggested this counselor did something possibly wrong or was even questioned. There wasn't even an Integrity Commissioner report that was done for this individual. If counselors around this horseshoe can recall, right after we are all elected in December, the number of emails that were suggesting all the wrongdoings that I've done all my life. And I defended to the committee at the NPCA to make them aware, here are the facts. I didn't run to a lawyer and charge the region hundreds or thousands of dollars to defend myself. I defended myself as an individual to the people sitting on the committee saying, these are all lies, I'll prove it to you, and I sent information to the members of the board to say, here, I declared conflicts, and I went through the minutes of the meetings to prove that whoever was sending this just didn't want me to be chair of the NPCA at the time. So I defended myself. Councillor Edgar and I are on Integrity Commissioner reports because we were questioned back a number of years ago. I went to my own lawyer and asked my own lawyer questions. I didn't put through a bill because I wasn't charged. The Integrity Commissioner's report came back clearing both Kelly and I. Now, if I was charged and I had to go to a lawyer, at that point in time, I believe we could have had some expenses go through the region, but they didn't go through the region. And in this case, as I've been told, and I read the minutes, someone complained and suggested the individual had a conflict, and then he ran to a lawyer, but it was after we'd already changed the rules. So we shouldn't be paying. So I'm not prepared to pay the bill.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just certainly the audit committee, unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the last one, and but I was chair of the first one, and it was basically a walk-in on that discussion, and we really didn't have clarity on what we were dealing with. But I'm looking through the attached minutes and so on. And I'm surprised because the report that aired bearless, and I believe is the one where the legal costs were, was January 2nd, 2018, not 19. And it was, did find that the counselor was not in breach of code of conduct, and that we did work through that year in April. It started, if I believe I'm correct, in April to start revising some of the budgets and what we could claim and what we could not claim. And it was at that point that legal costs were eliminated, I believe. And I just would like to confirm that with Anne Marie because my term came up before I got through it all. So back in April, was that when all of the budgets changed as to our expense allowances?
Clerk?
So in November of 2017 is when the expense policy was put in place.
No, April of 2018.
No, the very
Well,
first.
that's what's attached here.
So the expense policy was first approved in November of 2017. There were further amendments in April of 2018.
Thank you. That's the one I'm reading on. Okay. And that did include legal expenses at that point or not?
Clerk?
Through you, Chair, the only amendments to the policy were in April of 2018 were with regard to election year expenses.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, and prior to that, 2017 then, any legal expenses were no longer covered?
After November of 2017, any of the expenses that are ineligible in accordance with the policy are not eligible.
And the policy was?
The policy is that any legal expenses outside of the policy or the legal indemnification policy shall be submitted to the audit committee for recommendation to council.
All right. And my understanding is that the audit committee chose not to make that recommendation until after it was too late, and it came really the staff bringing it in because they had to do something about an outstanding bill that nothing had been declared to go forward. Am I correct?
Through you, Chair. So in September of 2018, the audit committee considered the expense. It was approved by audit committee at that time, contingent upon additional information being provided prior to it being ratified at the council meeting in September of 2018.
So this letter that we now have was provided, which was dated back in January of,
No,
January 2nd, 2018.
No, the letter that you have right now from the former counselor was just received in June at the audit committee.
Okay, I don't have that on here. Sorry.
It's attached to your audit committee minutes in your package.
I have the minutes, and at the bottom, it's not clear. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I find frankly, the costs that are being charged are probably well beyond what we would expect for such an issue, particularly if it is something he was exonerated from and was not held as being, it was held as not a breach of code of conduct. So it is still, it's up to the recommendation of the audit committee, which is made. And in this case, I think it's something that we're faced with. I really don't want to pay it, but I think we should be. Thank you.
Councillor Sendzik has declined. Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we have to pay this. And I've got a letter, which I had sent to the clerk, which I'm happy to share with you. And I did get permission from the former counselor to
put it on the screen if you'd like to see it. It's a legal opinion from Pat Mascarin, Airden Barillis, our former Integrity Commissioner. It's in the report? Has everybody read it? Okay. Well, this is from a certified specialist, municipal law. This is somebody who knows a little bit about municipal law. I'll read this in conclusion. It appears clear to me that the cost of the opinion are eligible expenses under section 4.9A of our policy. And if you read, he goes to the policy, A, B, C, and D. Legal costs arising from or in any way related to complaints under the Code of Conduct are eligible. Code of Conduct. Legal costs related to personal conflict of interest are ineligible. This is Code of Conduct. The letter, I don't know if, is that exact letter? I've sent it to the clerk. Is that in the report? So it's not in the report. Okay. So through you, Chair, I would ask our legal to give me some advice. I've been given permission by the former counselor to share this with everyone. Do we need to go in camera to do that? Because I would ask that his name be redacted, certainly.
Legal?
Through the chair, thank you. I don't believe it would be necessary for the name to be redacted in the circumstances as he did present in person. And if he's given permission for the email correspondence that you're referring to be released and it doesn't contain any personal information, i.e. Phone number or addresses or email addresses of people other than himself within the email correspondence, then I believe it could be dealt with in open.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would ask the clerk if we could share this. You would have the email. I would ask you to take a few minutes to read this. Legal opinion from an expert that was our integrity commissioner who gave the advice, who's saying it is eligible. So if we turn it down, you know he's going to bring legal action against us. I would. And it's a slam dunk. So I would ask you, please, to read through it and make a decision. Put politics aside and make a decision on what's right according to our own code of conduct and a legal opinion from an expert in municipal law.
Councillor Foster.
Just want to point out, being a member of the audit committee, and I voted in favor of this, it came out under 4.9D. So essentially, as 4.9D says, request for reimbursement of legal costs outside this policy. So we had gone through, reviewed, and we thought it was appropriate to be paying this. Thank you.
Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little confused. Actually, I'm a lot confused. Was there a complaint ever laid against the councillor in regards to this whole issue? Or was it a rumor of a complaint?
Clerk.
To the best of my knowledge, there was no code of conduct complaint respecting this.
So somebody suggested to or around the councillor that he may be whatever. Thank you.
Councillor Edgar.
So at issue here was the fact that there never was a complaint laid against the councillor and that there was only perhaps a threat of a complaint. So what he did was go to outside legal. He went for an outside legal opinion on the off chance that somebody was going to lay a complaint against him. Is that correct? That's the way it seems to me.
Clerk.
Through you, Chair, that would be my understanding of the situation.
And that's my understanding of this situation as well. And we have a good legal team right here. We have a risk management person up in the office who would be able to give all the kinds of advice for free before an issue like this comes to a head. I just don't understand why he didn't do that rather than go and blow $7,000 on some high-priced lawyer on something that wasn't even a lodged complaint. So I am totally against approving this. Thank you.
Councillor Bellows?
Thank you, Chair. I have a, when I was a city councillor, we were told we couldn't go to the legal team, that if we needed any legal advice with code of conduct or anything like that, we had to go to an outside firm that we would have to check with. So I'm not understanding why if the city are not allowed to go there, but you are regionally, because isn't that a conflict there? So I'm just asking for some clarification here.
Legal?
Certainly, through the chair. So if the advice that a councillor is seeking specifically relates to his or her obligations under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, that is something that you have to determine on your own and with the advice of your own council. And similar to what you're describing, the region's legal department does not give that advice because the region's legal department gives advice to the corporation, to council as a whole, not to individual councillors in their personal capacity.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Gale is next on my list.
Chair, can you put that letter up that Mayor Diodati was referring to on there so we can see it? If it takes a couple minutes, is it a long letter, is it a short letter that we can just look at, please? And then I've got some comments if you want.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. And we will endeavor to put the letter up.
Chair, I understand it's been emailed to everybody as well, so people could take a few minutes at least to read it.
When was it emailed?
Just now, just now.
Chair, I'm just waiting for a nod that everybody's read it more or less from you or something, then I'll ask my questions if you don't mind.
Clerk?
Through you, Chair, would you like it put up on the screen, or is everyone just reading it on their own?
If the public does, I think you have to for the public now, because anybody watching this on the screen is going to wonder what we're reading. And
Councillor Gale has requested to be on the screen.
Yes, please, for the public to show it at home or whatever, please.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
That's the question, yes. Councillor Gale?
Thank you, Chair. So I think everybody's had a chance to read it, and the public should have had a chance to read it. And like Councillor Diodati said, it says that the expenses are eligible, or whatever the exact word is. I want to get into it in that. Now, without saying names here, this is a councillor that had, I don't know what word to use other than threatened with a possible code of conduct complaint or integrity commission complaint against him. And also, we saw in the emails at committee that this person, who also laid complaints over the course of time against myself, against other councillors in here, and went through with them, had put in there that this man, this councillor before, was supporting the wrong group, for lack of better words, on the NPCA, and that's why this happened. I wonder if this council would be looking at this different if this person was re-elected. If it was sitting in this chamber, I think they would be. But no, because he's not here and lost the election as a result of it, I think that changes everybody's mind. We're a bit stronger against somebody that's not here. Now, this man came to council, to committee, and I agree totally, it's not a rubber stamp with committees coming, but he explained his whole case here. At the last council meeting, when we referred it back to committee, words came up that this man didn't provide all the information that the acting CAO asked for. But that was changed at that meeting. I brought it up. I asked the acting CAO to come down, and my question was, did he provide everything that you asked for? And he said, yes, he did. That went wrong. So everybody got the wrong interpretation there that, hey, you're not providing the information we're asking for. We're paying $6,800. You know, come on, come work with us and we'll work with you. But he did. And then I remember him going out and saying, or he even said it here, do I have to come back to council again for this again? Unfortunately, if it comes up, you have to. When do we stop? When do we think we're being unfair here? There's a person that's laid a complaint every time against other people, numerous complaints, so he didn't come through this time. But some of us look at complaints differently. Some people get paranoid if I say I threaten you with a lawsuit over something. A lot of us say, bring it on. You know, good luck, I'm innocent. Other people get annoyed, get worried about it. But we have an integrity person here that said that it's eligible. So I think the common sense thing is we learn from this right now. But we vote to pay this and we move on because it could have happened to any of us, and it probably will happen to somebody here. Some of us can afford lawyers. Like I said, I didn't charge anybody for mine, but you know, I think we move on and pay for this. And I think it would be different if he was sitting here, and that's not fair to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask you to our legal counsel? I'm sure she's aware of what the circumstances why this legal opinion was requested. Is it a conflict of, or a request for code of conduct or a conflict of interest? Like which one was he seeking
legal
advice for?
Through the chair, so I can't speak to the manner in which it was specifically submitted to the clerk's department for reimbursement, if that's the nature of the councillor's inquiry. As I understand the email correspondence that's just been provided this evening, legal counsel for the councillor's suggesting that he would interpret it as falling under a different category. The bottom line is that staff at the time that the request came forward did not feel certain that it was covered, and that's the very reason why expenses under those circumstances are submitted to the audit committee in accordance with the policy for determination. So staff pay expenses where they're satisfied that it clearly falls under one of the permitted eligible expenses, but in circumstances where staff aren't certain, it's submitted to audit committee for a determination, and that's what's happening here for council, for the audit committee, and then council to make a decision in this matter.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. No other, we have, okay, Councillor Redekop for clarification.
Chair, just, yes, for clarification. The letter, the opinion letter that was provided for which the lawyer charged, for which the former councillor is requesting reimbursement, starts by saying that he's been consulted on a matter of conflict of interest. Then, way down in the letter, that original letter, the lawyer says, under Part 2, Code of Conduct for members of council, although no allegations have been made that you contravened Niagara Region's Code of Conduct, etc., So the lawyer is putting in gratuitous comments with respect to a code of conduct violation, which wasn't alleged, and that's the basis of his opinion in the second letter, which says, the provision in your expenses policy, which relates to code of conduct violations, means that that's the provision under which payment is justified. So he's created his own basis for providing an argument for the former counselor that, in fact, the policy covers what he sought legal advice on. But the reason he sought legal advice was because of a conflict of interest allegation, which clearly is not permitted by the policy.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind this council that Mr. Mascarin was our integrity commissioner when the counselor went to him for advice and told him this is the path he should go down. I don't know how you want to look at this, but either way, we got our fingerprints all over it. We got a chance to make this go away, or it's going to come back. It's not going away, because I can tell you, I would bring it back, because this is not right. Forget about politics. Here's the request. Here's the advice. And he was our integrity commissioner at the time who gave the advice to the counselor. One of us is going to be in this position. I guarantee it. Just think long and hard when you make this decision. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is a two-part analysis. We either accept Mr. Mascarin's opinion and justify this expense under 4.9A. And if you disagree with that, then we go to 4.9D. And the opinion is pretty clear. It falls under 4.9A. There is overlap there, whether it's a code of conduct or conflict of interest. But in his opinion, it falls under 4.9A. If you disagree with that opinion, then we fall under 4.9D. And in 4.9D, it says it goes to the audit committee. And when you look at the history of this matter, it's gone to the audit committee back in May 2018. They approved it then. They said it was subject to him producing information. Fair enough. But then it got approved in May 2019 at the audit committee. Then it went to regional council in May 2019. We approved it, and I appreciate that was at the end of the night, and there wasn't much discussion, but we did approve it. And I think staff, we approved those minutes at the audit committee. And I think staff was put in an awkward position afterwards because there was a request for reconsideration, but ultimately, and it got, subsequently to that meeting, it got approved again at this most recent audit committee. So I think it's pretty clear what the audit committee's position is on this issue, and I'll certainly be supporting this reimbursement.
No further speakers. So you see on your screen what you're being voting on, and Councillor Diodati has requested a recorded vote. So we are having a recorded vote.
The vote is open.
The motion is carried. Now we call vote on the balance of the audit committee report. All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Furtick had a question before we call the vote. Clarification?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It was in reference to the NPCA financial statements in the audit report. My question was, is the accounts receivables only show $278,000, yet Hamilton, to my understanding, owed 1.4, 1.5 million, and I wonder why it's not reflected in the financials. If there was a doubt as to the collection of that, then obviously I would have thought that you have what they call allowance for bad debts, and I don't see that reflected anywhere in the financials. So I'm questioning the audit. It doesn't clarify what the position was, in my opinion.
Ms. Chamberlain?
Through the chair, I believe what the councillor is inquiring about is the $1.28 million that is actually an amount due to the region from the NPCA, not from the city of Hamilton. That amount was held in, or is being held in reserve, and could have been recorded as a liability and accounts payable from the NPCA to the Niagara region at the end of the year in the financial statements. However, it was the position of the NPCA at their year end that that was still under litigation, and so in order to record the liability, you have to meet two criteria. The amount needs to be known, and it has to be a reasonable expectation that they're going to pay it. Because it was still under litigation, they did not record it as a liability. So it's not recorded as a liability, but it is held in reserve, and it will be paid to the Niagara region this year.
The entire one, including the quota, or separate, okay. Yes, Councillor Burdick, further question?
Just to follow up, Mr. Chair, thank you for the explanation. And I would have thought that the accountants might have made a footnote that maybe doesn't reflect in the financials, but by showing it as a footnote, it shows that there's a litigation or there's an issue with the debt. So anyway, however which way you look at it, I guess I don't agree that it wasn't as accurate as it should be, that's all.
Okay, we're now voting on the remainder of the report. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Bellows? Yes, I want to get Councillor Bellows on first.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks,
if I could just ask a question or make a suggestion. When it says here's non-financial assets, and it's got chair and interim chief administrative office secretary treasurer, it's got a signature there, but it's not clear who actually are these signatures. So going forward, could we ensure that we have the person's name typed out so that we know, because it's hard to read the signature who's who. I know I have to do that at anything that I sign, so I would really like to see who's signing this.
Thank you for that suggestion, Councillor Bellows. Sure that can be complied with. Now the vote on the remainder of the committee report. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We now move to the Committee of the Whole minutes of July 4, 2019. Call on Councillor Dart for the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Report COTW 5-2019 being the open session. Minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on Thursday, July the 4th, 2019 be received, and the recommendations contained therein approved, and is seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The next shall be the Public Works Committee. The minutes from Tuesday, July 9, 2019. I call on Councillor Rigby for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A resolution of council, Regional Council meeting, July 18, 2009. That report, PWC 7/2019, being the open and closed session minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on Tuesday, July 9th to 19, be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Edgar.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The next is the Public Health and Social Services Committee. Call on Councillor Greenwood for the motion. This is Tuesday, July 9, 2019.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, that report PHSSC-7-2019 being the open session minutes of the Public Health and Social Services Committee meeting held on Tuesday, July the 19th, 2019 be received, and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Any discussion? Councillor Redekop.
Chair, with respect to item, sorry, with respect to item number 5.4, What if we could just get some explanation? I've read the report, PhD 11, which provides for the sole sourcing of basically $1 million plus contract for computers and service. I'm having difficulty understanding why we would do that, although it's outlined in the report. Maybe we could get some comment from staff.
Medical Officer of Health.
Okay.
Dr. Hergy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to the councillor's question, our emergency medical services has an electronic documentation system for documenting when they're out on the road. We currently own licenses for the software. However, we need to renew the hardware as well renew the servicing contract for that hardware. We went through a process of looking at all of the alternatives out there, and there's no alternatives that would be considerably better. Given that we already own licenses, given that there would be transition costs to switching a system, we therefore felt it made sense to continue with this service for an additional few years until we finished with our system transformation project, at which point we can completely reassess what is the documentation system we need for the future of this service.
So Chair, it talks about an expression of interest, and I think it identifies maybe 3 potential providers of this. And this was 5 years ago plus that these computers were purchased, and these contracts were entered into because I see they've been extended. And I did see in the report something about uncertainty of the future as to what systems would be provided. Can you comment on that? Because I'm still having difficulty wanting to approve $1 million expenditure without getting a full understanding.
Dr. Hergy.
So, Mr. Chair, as the councillors well know, our emergency medical services is going through a system transformation project where we have a number of different activities to change the way in which we deliver care as well as who delivers care. Given that these protocols are changing and in a few years we will no longer be delivering care in the same way, it may make sense that the current documentation tools we use are no longer the most appropriate documentation tools to be using. So we are anticipating that in approximately 3 years, we would be doing a much more fulsome RFP, looking at our new requirements for documentation under this transformed service and figuring out what we need at that time. Given that that is likely to occur in a few years, we don't think it makes sense to go through a technological transition now, which we will then repeat again in a few years. Given that we will pay for the cost of transition twice, we'll have the complexity of going through that transition occurring twice. I hope that answers the councillor's question.
Thank you.
Councillor Verdict.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to extend to Dr. Hershey that the homelessness of veterans, that the Royal Canadian Legion and the Department of National Defence have a program for homelessness. And I want to extend to you the information that if anybody that comes under this program happens to be a veteran, please go to these organizations. They have lots of money for the homelessness veteran. So let's not, let's make sure that we, go to them because they do have the funds, and we can help ourselves too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to note, and I appreciate Councillor Redekop's question, Councillor Senzik and I made sure that those questions were asked at committee. And I appreciate our lead in EMS. Kevin got back to me on it as well afterwards and was able to provide some additional information. So if you do have questions, please reach out to Kevin, because the process that is being followed, in my opinion, is correct. And yes, it's a lot of money, but unfortunately, it's one of those situations where we have to go through this. So thank you.
Thank you. No further discussion. If not, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The next is the Corporate Services Committee. minutes of Wednesday, July 10, 2019. I call on Councillor Foster for the motion.
It's probably going to take me longer to read the motion than the actual meeting, so I have a resolution moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Edgar that reports CSC 7-2019 being the open session minutes of the Corporate Services Committee that was held on Wednesday, July the 10th, 2019, be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved. Thank you.
Discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the question on this, and that's, you see it on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. I'm going to ask council who's interested in serving on the 50th anniversary committee. If you just indicate with your hand if you're interested in serving on the committee. Is there a determined number or?
Up to 5.
Up to 5. So who would like to serve on it?
Do we know when the meetings are intended to be held? Is this a during the day meeting or an after 4 meeting, or we don't know?
We don't know.
Okay.
So raise your hand, please, and clerk is watching to see who wishes to serve in the committee. I see at least 3. It's up to 5. I see 4. I see 5. It looks like Councillor Bellows, Councillor Greenwood, Councillor Valala, Councillor Butters, and Councillor Foster. I think that's 5. I just counted my fingers, and that's 5. Is there a seconder for this motion? So mover and seconder. Okay, Councillor Campion is moving it, and second is Councillor DeZero. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next will be the Planning and Economic Development Committee, minutes of July 10, 2019. I call on Councillor Hewson for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, that report PEDC 7-2019 being the open session minutes of the Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting held on Wednesday, July the 10th, 2019 be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved.
Any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. The next is the Chief Administrative Officer's reports. And it's Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And I'm going to call on Councillor Junkin for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butters, that report CAO 8-2019 dated July 18th, 2019, respecting Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan be received for information.
Discussion? If not, all in favor? Oh, sorry, there's discussion. Councillor Hewson.
So this actually is very closely aligned with one of the requests that I had made to get an update from Dr. Hergy on, who's not here, on our level of collaboration on mental health initiatives with EMS and police and other community organizations that focus on that. I was hoping to get an update.
I'm going to go to the CAO.
Through your chair, I believe Chief Smith would like to provide some update on that.
Chief Smith is going to provide that information for us. Chief?
Great. Through the chair, I hung around long enough. Dr. Hurji may be able to add more, but in his absence, what I can tell you is that report is being drafted. I've just seen the latest revision, and it's being led by Dr. Feller. So I expect that to come in the next round.
Okay, and would that be coming to public health, I'm assuming, or will it come to council?
Through the chair, I understand it will be a PHSSC report.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Houston. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The next will be under motions, agribusiness strategic planning workshop. I call on Councillor Hewson for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a resolution moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Witteveen, whereas Niagara's agribusiness sector was the focus of a recent policy brief conducted by the Niagara Community Observatory, whereas agribusiness is one of Niagara's top economic sectors, contributing $1.41 billion towards GDP, 215,000 acres of farmland, almost 20,000 jobs in Niagara, whereas gaps have been identified in the sector's production, processing, distribution chains, and value-added opportunities, whereas economic trends indicate that the agribusiness sector in Niagara is growing, and whereas Niagara's agribusiness sector would benefit from an established network for strategic visioning and planning that incorporates and aligns with a variety of stakeholders from across the region, including farmers, entrepreneurs, workers, industry associations, political representatives, and relevant educational representatives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Regional Council direct planning and economic development staff to initiate a meeting with relevant stakeholders to determine the potential for establishing an agribusiness strategic planning work group.
Discussion. We have Councillor Hewson has spoken. Do you wish to speak further, Councillor Hewson?
Sure. I just want to add, the idea of this is just to further to the research that the NCO had conducted. They called for a greater level of collaboration at the business strategic planning level, not at the level where perhaps the Agricultural Committee is meeting. It's not an intention to duplicate the work there, but it's an intention to engage in the business sector to advance the business interests of the sector, and it is just a suggestion for a meeting. I don't expect it to have any type of budget assigned to it, and I'm looking for Valerie from Economic Development to bring back feedback in terms of the interest in establishing this group, recognizing that further to the suggestion of this policy report, how does it get operationalized? And if there is an absence of someone to take a leadership role in trying to initiate that, I would like the region to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Zalepa.
Thank you, Chair Bradley. I do like the motion, and I'm pleased to see it come forward, so thank you, Councillor, for that. And what I guess I would like to speak to is I'm really pleased to see the third paragraph speak to the value-added opportunities in agriculture and farming, things like estate wineries, farm wineries, events, things that are helping the agricultural community be productive and profitable. Because as you know, we had the Wine Council here a few months ago, and I think the number they threw to us was 85% of agricultural operators in the wine business are underwater, in the red, not making any money. And I know people say, well, that's shocking. How we drink a lot of wine. How does that happen? But it's happening, and our agriculture industry is struggling. So I'm really pleased to see this. And I guess my only question, and perhaps it's through you to the chair, to the councillor, is the value-added opportunities gap. I'm hoping that's the intention to take a look at the municipalities in Niagara region and see where there are inconsistencies in the promotion of the value-added opportunities to make sure we get more consistency in application. I think that's where you're going, and I'm hoping that's the case. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before coming down this evening, I was in discussion with Mayor Easton, who's at home recovering from hip surgery, and by the way, she also wants to thank everyone for sending flowers, much appreciated. But she wholeheartedly supports this, as do I as well. And the single biggest thing with this, and I can say, the municipality of the town of Lincoln adopted the mantra of Centre of Agriculture Excellence. Part of that is understanding how secondary values can come into the farming process and how to make these things work better, so or to be of more benefit to the farmers themselves. So I'm really hoping under the part political representatives, I think there's learnings that can be taken from municipalities as we're going through this. Lincoln is a good example. You know, possibly even Wainfleet. I mean, the reality is that these are big agriculture areas, and so it would be good to also get some input from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I would just ask that this be forwarded to the Agricultural Committee. Councillor Woodavine is our chair for that. Just for some comment, we know we don't want the two to be part and parcel of each other, but I think there's members of that committee that can have some good comments. So if we can just, once this is passed, we can forward it to that committee for a short comment, and I'm sure the chair can move that discussion along very quickly.
Thank you, Councillor DeZero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions to the mover, if I may.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly who else would be, and I very much support this. I think it's a good thing to do if we're trying to grow the agricultural business. I'm just wondering how you would define other industries and who else would be, like, are we going into culinary? What other things were you thinking of, or what other stakeholders were you thinking of?
I was thinking of other organized networks that focus on a farm or agriculture related sector, such as the Grape Growers Association, or related industries such as that. It really would be more of a discovery meeting. The initial people who were involved in the paper involved like Vineland Research and Niagara College, and they were asking, how do we operationalize this? So this is trying to take this to the next level.
Okay, so you would include, sorry, so would you include like even hospitality, culinary, or stick strictly to the agricultural field?
Well, initially the idea is sticking to agricultural, but I imagine as they determine what their strategic goals are, it would be appropriate to determine who the best stakeholders would be at the table for that discussion.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Woodavine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Steele. Yes, as Chair of APAC, I've had a discussion with Councillor Houston on this, and the intent is to look at agriculture in a higher level. Or APAC is more people working on the ground and commodity representatives. As Councillor Houston explained, there was a presentation in Pelham not that long ago that took that higher level and understood that there were some opportunities in clustering in agribusiness. So my understanding is that dealing with Niagara College, Brock University, Vineland Research, and possibly NPCA to look at some new strategies or that higher level strategy, looking at the whole region, and that the APAC would be more the on the ground dealing with the farm, more farm related. So it was a good opportunity to draw those stakeholders in to look at that higher level discussion. So I would I would be asked to be on that committee or that working group, so we could flush out some of those things and see we might be able to create some action items out of that would grow the agriculture, agribusiness, and agri-food cluster. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. We always hear about the grapes, and I know the grape industry here is a huge industry in Niagara. West Lincoln, Pelham, Wainfleet, huge industry there as well in production of your bacon, your eggs, that you have every morning. So we don't want to forget that. This is an excellent idea, Councillor Houston. I fully support it. For example, we just had last week dinner at the dairy in Wainfleet. 2,400 people come out and they see how your milk is produced. It's fantastic tourism. People come from all over, their kids, and it's an excellent way they tour the barn, full automated milking, and then there's a little dinner after, hot dog, hamburger, and stuff for the kids to do. that sort of thing. So I know the wine industry is huge, but I don't live in a wine industry area. And so from our perspective, there's also lots of things to do in not just the winery. So we've also, we've had Kelly Provo come out from Economic Development. She's come out and we've explored ways to try to bring some agritourism to Wainfleet, and of course West Lincoln, Pelham as well. So it is an area that can be tapped into. It's an area that we should tap into. 2,400 people come out to see how a cow gets milked. So there's all sorts of opportunities there, and it's a great thing. Kids, you know, the kids are into it, and it's education, and your food doesn't just come from the grocery store, it comes from somewhere else. So I really strongly support this, and thank you, Diana, for bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Bellows.
My question was, is tourism also going to be one of the stakeholders? Because I think that's a huge opportunity for agribusiness to, as what our councillor was saying about, you know, the dairy, we've got the tender fruit. There's all kinds of initiatives that can be done, but you also have to make that part of tourism, I believe.
I'm happy to make it as inclusive as possible at this point, but I would defer that to Director Coons to follow up in terms of establishing who the best stakeholders are at that table.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hewson. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. At the request of Councillor Senzik, we moved the item that was on the beginning to this point in the discussion. And this is a a memorandum from Chair Bradley dated July 18, 2019, respecting Niagara Region's representation on the Board of Directors of the NPCA. Councillors will remember at the May 16 special meeting of Council, a motion was passed that directed the Regional Chair to enter into negotiations with Hamilton and Haldimand regarding the composition of the NPCA Board of Directors. As a direct result of this motion, talks were held on June 10 with representatives from the 3 municipalities, at which time I committed to determining Council's preference regarding the board composition. By the way, I have no indication what Council's position was at that time, but I did indicate that I would get back to them on that. At our June 20 meeting of Regional Council, we had what we would refer to as an informal survey of Council's membership was taken and indicated the will of Council was to increase Niagara Region's membership on the NPCA Board of Directors from 12 members to 15. Some had suggested 18, some said we had 27, but it seemed to be that people were settling on 15 out of those choices. Based on the discussion that occurred regarding this poll, as well as the debate that arose from CLC 46-219, it appears that Regional Council is eager to both increase Niagara's membership on the board and to make the necessary appointments as soon as possible. In listening to the June 20 discussion, it was also suggested that Niagara's 3 additional members would be regional councillors to ensure an appropriate mix of elected representatives and citizen appointments. To this end, it is proposed that councillors consider the following 2 actions: that the regional chair be directed to inform mayors of Hamilton and Haldimand that Niagara Region will be increasing their NPCA Board of Directors membership from 12 to 15 in order to ensure an appropriate mix of elected representatives on the board, and that Niagara Regional Council appoint 3 regional councillors to the NPCA Board of Directors effective immediately. Should Council decide to approve these motions, the intent is that the selection of 3 councillors could occur this evening. I have, I think, a further comment. The legacy issues surrounding the NPCA and the membership of the board have rightfully been of keen interest to this term of Council. Based on the significant debate that has transpired at Council, as well as numerous conversations I've had with members of Council, it appears to be in the best interest of Council to move forward on these 2 actions this evening, and it will be up to Council to decide that. I think I have a motion from Councillor height in this regard?
I'm sure, I'll make that motion if you'd like. I don't have the motion in front of me, but I'll make that motion to move it to 15 and have 3 people from regional council elected to represent the region.
You have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Kiokio. Discussion. Councillor Senzik.
Thank you for the indulgence through the chair and through the background information that you provided. I'll ask for the motion to be split 1 and 2, and I'm just going to speak to number 1 because while I understand the issues surrounding the organization, and this is not good board governance. You're going to have 21 people sitting around a table, and I'm voting against this just on the principles of you've got an organization, and I'll ask the chair of the NPCA, is it $40 million organization, $10 million? Forgive me, 10? 21 people sitting around a board for $10 million. That's ridiculous. And so I'm voting against just on principle that any person who sits on a board would say that 21 people for an organization that size, that is, you will not find anyone who will agree with that. So if we can't find the right number, or if the board can't recommend, I'd rather the board come back and recommend what the number should be of a good governance structure for the NPCA than to get into this sandbox war with Hamilton and Haldeman. I'm sorry, I'm just going to vote against it on the principles of a 21-person board of a $10 million organization is beyond the pale.
Councillor Diodati.
I'm not going to add anything. I agree with what he just said.
Any other discussion? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you bringing this forward this evening. Having been, as I said at that other meeting, one of the original 12, I used a differing description last time. We have been doing a lot of good work at the NPCA. And part of it helped with the fact that we did have politicians who were there doing some pretty solid work and some pretty heavy lifting. Part of the problem that we have right now, and this is personal opinion, but first of all, we've been changing over an awful lot of things at the NPCA, and we've been adding confusion as we're going on, and I think the chair and vice chair can add to that. But the other part of this is that the political piece has disappeared practically completely, okay? And that's not in our interest at this particular regional council. I happen to like what it is that you brought forward. I took the opportunity to talk to the regional chair about this, and I know he has broached this with the other municipalities as well, and we have not got any flack back from them within that. So and I think this is a good short-term approach that we can follow this term of council. This is something that we can go and take a good solid look at, depending if, as Councillor Gale says, everything's going to be blown up going into the next election anyway. But if we happen to still be around, and if we still happen to be the ones that are going to have to make decisions, we can go in that last year and rethink that process along with the rest as well, particularly once the provincial government comes down with their changes. But I really truly believe that as a council, we need to be well represented on that particular board. There are a lot of financial considerations that are coming into play. The shift that has occurred now is that we are not seeing the financial, I'll say, responsibility, particularly with some of the new members that have come on board. So I happen to think that this is a good move. Thank you.
Councillor Bilsma.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm in full support of this. I'd like to just address two items. One that was already raised. 21 is less than 31. What we have seen, what we have witnessed in this council chamber, the transition from a previous term to this term is quite remarkable in terms of our ability to work. Yeah, we have our vigorous discussions, but we've in every meeting we've progressed and we've made an advance for the better of our communities that we represent, and no less the NPCA with 21 people. with the 18 that we currently have been working with for the past 6 months, we've made steady strides towards stability, transparency, accountability. We've done remarkable work in HR and staff morale. And that brings me to the second point, which is ultimately what we're looking for is levels of continuity. And I spoke to that before. We're looking for continuity. Nobody's clinging to power. What we're doing is saying that we've made good work. We continue to do good work. The committees have been struck. Governance is doing good work. CAO selection continues to do good work. The audit committee has already, the budget and audit committee has already done some initial assumptions and meetings in order to facilitate the budget process alongside with what the regional's working alongside. We've had meetings with Commissioner Harrison already, so that the errors that we've seen and the challenges we've seen with the organization in the past have been slowly resolved. The NPCA has made a recommendation and it has not been followed. The recommendation that the NPCA made to this council was 6 elected and 6 citizen appointees, a balance. It's very consistent with what conservation authorities have done right across Ontario, and is found in many of the conservation authorities. Some mix between 50% and 100% elected officials, but 50% is very normative. That was a recommendation. Through no fault of ours at the NPCA level, and I'm speaking on behalf of the chair just briefly, the pendulum has swung all the way through, such that we face an opportunity, the current situation where we only have one of the elected representatives sustaining their vote. That's Vice Chair Hewson. All the rest are citizen appointees. That has posed challenges, and I'll leave it at that. That was the recommendation of the NPCA. What we have now is a situation where we've made some good strides forward, and we're rebooting the whole organization, including and not limited to some of the valuable work that's already been undertaken by the CAO Selection Committee, which will have virtually no members retained. So we have to almost do a reboot on the whole thing. And we can salvage that work. We have an interim CAO, Ms. Gilwood, who is beyond reproach, but she's already retired twice. So we understand the same malady that happens to us all, we're all getting older, is also happening to Ms. Gilwood, who, as I want to state one more time, is beyond reproach in her exceptional work in conservation. We're trying to provide stability to the organization, and I think that's the key here. At this time, to upset the apple cart again is just unimaginable. It would sacrifice the amount of work and stability that we've already worked for. This is a small increase that allows us to, how would you say, I don't want to use the term save face, but to be consistent with the representatives that the local area municipalities have put forward, but still retain some measure of control by this council, who is the sending council. This is where the decisions have been made. I understand that these were very political, and I totally agree with Councillor Gale, and we've talked a lot about that. But I would just ask that you indulge your organization, recognize that we are still very tender. We've done good work. We're still very tender. We're looking for continuity, for some consistency in the organization, so that we can continue to do that good work that we've made and provide an organization that remarkably is transformed in an expedient time, but just not 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiokio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak in support of the 15 moving forward with electing 3 councillors. We've always talked about a balanced board, and I think we're getting there. It's showed by the municipalities how they're electing to go with the citizen rather than a politician. You've got very qualified people on that board, probably more knowledgeable than some of us, a lot of us in this room here today. So I think we have a good board moving forward. To put another 3 at least councillors on there, I think we have a balance moving forward. So I do support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Chair Bradley. My question was answered by Mayor Bylsma.
Thank you, Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to compliment Councillor Senzik for moving this to the end, because we're sick of talking about the NPCA. We're sick of talking about the CAO recruitment or whatever we want to talk about. I mentioned that about 5 months ago, and we're all sick of it. But, and getting back to your comment about the budget and that, we spend so much time with that, not on the police, not on Niagara Regional Housing and that. So my question to you, Chair, probably is, are we done after this? What comes back to us next meeting on this? And I've got more questions too.
That's always up to, in answer to Councillor Gale, that's always up to Regional Council to determine what they wish to bring forward. I don't anticipate anything necessarily, but Regional Council, you as councillors may bring anything forward at any time.
And I get that, sir. But, and another question to you, because I need your opinion. Are we poking the bear on this? And I say, are we igniting Hamilton by doing something like this? You know, and maybe through you to the chair, if he wishes to answer this, do you fear that there's going to be a reprisal back from Hamilton on this? You don't have to answer if you don't want to, unless you. And what's the comments from the Hamilton members on your board about something like this? Do they know about this?
Yes, they do.
And
they speak as individuals. I've heard no disapproval of it, but ultimately these are the negotiations that our chair works out with the mayors of the 2 other municipalities.
Okay, Chair, and this is not, this
you
is
will
harsh.
know, Councillor Gale, because that's a good question. You will know that they arbitrarily increase their numbers. Both Haldeman and Hamilton increase their numbers without objection from us.
Yeah, but Councillor, Chair, to you, Councillor Senzik had such a valid point there. How many people do you need on a board of $11 million on something like this? I would have cut it right back. But if we can put it to bed and everybody's in agreement and you can make decisions on this, fine. I don't doubt that there's qualified people on there. With that many people, there's got to be. But regardless of this, I've heard the comment that everybody's congratulating each other on the heavy lifting you've done, but it keeps coming back to us. So hopefully this is it. And this is not a knock against you, Councillor Bylsma or anybody, but this has to move on. So I'm going to vote for this because I told Councillor Foster I would vote for this, and I see the good on this as long as it's not going to ignite Hamilton. But I hope it goes away, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gale. Appreciate your remarks. And Councillor Rigby.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have difficulty with this because I think we're just adding more and more again. And frankly, we went into this putting 12 people in there. Granted, they were all from this council. But then our communities across the region decided, oh, we're going to appoint somebody, and we lost control. We really did. We lost control. And we weren't able to put a matrix or any kind of opportunity to have a balanced forum and plan ahead. So I don't want to see us expanded. I applaud it. I applaud the people that are there, and I can well understand the difficulty of keeping mindful of the dollars and cents. I do understand that I know we have very good people who are in the agricultural area and are mindful of our environment. And I look forward to this committee coming back with how do we go forward in the next time so that we can have the right balance of people when we're there. So I don't like I certainly understand we've been asked to split this, so I think we'll do it that way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Dart.
Has any consideration been given to talk to the others? I agree with Councillor Senzik that you got too many people for a $10 million budget, in my estimation. Has any consideration been given to ask Haldeman and Hamilton to reduce, they doubled their numbers. Has any consideration, discussion, they're not going to listen to us, they won't listen to us, is that what you're saying? Because it just seems, it's too many. It's too many. You got 21 people for this, and I'm in full agreement with Councillor Sendzik. I'm going to vote against the motion. I'm going to also ask, could you speak to the other two municipalities and see if they would reduce, if they would change, if they would rescind what they did? Thank you.
Thank you very much. In regard to your legitimate question about asking them to reduce, the answer has not been they've been asked to reduce. The purpose of this was expansion from 12 to 15 from Niagara was simply to have more elected representatives on there. That was the purpose of it, Councillor. And Councillor Bellows.
Thank you, Chair Bradley. How many regional councillors are on this board right now? I'm sorry, I can't keep track. One? And who is that? Okay, so is Councillor Hewson, is she a Pelham appointed representative?
Yes.
Okay, so then she does not represent the region at those meetings, because you can't have it both ways, correct? Because I want to know if Councillor Hewson is municipally appointed, then she's not regionally appointed. But if she could vote for the region, although she's municipally appointed, then we actually only need two more. So could you clarify that for me?
There's no requirement that Councillor Hewson take any particular position. Her name has been forwarded to this council by the council of the town of Pelham.
Right.
And when she is there, she's not representing the region or the town of Pelham. She's sitting as a member of the board. Yes, Pelham has appointed her, but she's now a member who can make whatever decision she deems appropriate, unless she decides to consult with her local municipality.
So does that mean we would only need two instead of three now? See where I'm coming from?
What that would mean, Councillor Bellows, is that then you would have three instead of four elected representatives on the board. Councillor Hewson.
I just thought everyone would be overjoyed to know that the Economic Development Committee is looking at a matrix as to how we appoint people to the NPCA, and we might be discussing it at the next meeting. So you're welcome.
And as Councillor Hewson has appropriately pointed out, that will be done for the group that would be appointed for 2022 and beyond. So she's quite correct that they're looking for that. Councillor Hewson.
Unless the other committee who is looking at the 2-year board terms ends up successfully passing that. Is that not correct?
Clerk?
Through you, Chair, I would suggest that the 2-year term limit would not be implemented until 2022 as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewson. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. I think very important part of this discussion that we've forgotten about is that we are the ones that are supposed to be responsible for the tax dollars. Elected officials are responsible for tax dollars, not appointed people from the community. And that's something that we have to remember, because the NPCA is spending tax dollars. So that's why I will be supporting this motion. And just to give you some context, the College of Early Childhood Educators, which is the body that regulates all of the early childhood education teachers in the province, they have a $6 million budget, and they have 24 members on their board. So just for your information. Thank you.
Councillor Height. Thank you. Councillor Height.
Yes, I support the motion on the floor. If you can recall, we've been told that the NPCA legislation tells us how much money they want. We don't determine how much they get. So it's even more important to have representatives of the region on that committee. I'd love to see the committee much smaller than 21, with same thoughts as Councillor Senzik, but unless Hamilton reduced theirs, and what they did was they doubled their numbers, and they made sure they had 2 representatives of their 4 from their council. Halderman added 1 from their council to make sure there was representation from their council. It's imperative for us to have representation from here. And if the local communities, and we're concerned about being fair, that all 12 communities would have a say in who they put there, which is great. We're doing that. Now we have to make sure we have a say. And by making sure we have at least a minimum of 3 councillors from this horseshoe, I think it's important to do that. And I also think it's important for the larger communities to have a second person, in the sense St. Catherine should have a second person, maybe Niagara Falls, maybe Welland, Port Colborne. Some of the communities that have a larger number should have a little more say, because the skin is our skin in play here. We represent, between St. Catherine, Niagara Falls, Welland, if we include Port Colborne, more than half of the population in Niagara, and we should have more than half the say. And I think it's important for us to have more representation there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Height. This is a decision of members of council, which is strictly a decision of regional council, and you will make the determination as to whether you wish to proceed with what you see on the screen. I think there was a request that it be voted on separately. That was by, I think, Councillor Senzik had asked separate the 2. So having had the discussion, we will do the first part first. So read on your screen that the regional chair be directed to inform the mayors of Hamilton and Haldimand that Niagara Region will be increasing their NPCA Board of Directors membership from 12 to 15 in order to ensure an appropriate mix of elected representatives on the board. Everyone understand that? A recorded vote is requested. All in favor and all opposed. So recorded vote.
The vote is open.
The motion is carried. That on that portion. The second portion now will come forward, and we'll see that on the screen. It says that Niagara Regional Council appoint 3 regional councillors to the NPCA Board of Directors effective immediately. Everyone understand that? Did you want a recorded vote, Jim, again? Recorded vote has been requested by Councillor Diodati.
The vote is open.
The motion is carried. We're now in a position to appoint the people who will be from the Regional Council. As we did with the 50th Anniversary Committee, I'll ask you to indicate, there may be more than 3, I'll ask you to indicate if you're interested in serving. Please indicate, and the clerk will take account of that. So all interested in serving, please raise your hands. Councillor Foster, I see. Councillor Bilsma, Councillor Zalepa, Councillor Height, Councillor Yip, Councillor Greenwood, Councillor Steele, Councillor Gibson have all indicated they wish to. So we will go into a ballot.
Sorry, Chair, I'm gonna need this.
It says if the numbers interested are more than 3, which they are, in accordance with the procedural bylaw, the vote will be conducted by open ballot. You are to print legibly up to 3 names from the list. You must print your name in the space provided on the ballot. So ballots will be distributed. Councillor Zeppa has a question.
Yeah, could you just remove my name? Sorry about that, I apologize.
You want your name removed?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, Councillor Zalepa has removed his name.
Thanks.
You want the names? Yeah. Sure. I didn't get this side.
Okay, again, the clerk would like to see the hands raised again of those who are interested. I mentioned that it was Councillor Gibson, Councillor Steele, Councillor Yep, Councillor Greenwood, Councillor Height, Councillor Bilsma, Councillor Foster. I didn't miss any?
Make sure I didn't.
All the names on the screen are none to be added? So I'll read again. You are to print legibly up to 3 names from the list. You must print your name in the space provided on the ballot. Thank you. Ballots will be distributed.
So you're in form. If you want one, sure.
You go with them. Can you stay here, Emery?
I'm going to stay here, yes. Yeah. Matthew's going to go with Kelly and Mark.
Notices of motion and other business while they're counting.
Yeah. So while they're counting, I will, after you finish, you have to vote first. When they're counting, I'll continue on with business.
Todd's going to go with you. Todd's going with you.
All right, I gotta find out where I am. Six, 7, 8. 3, oh, down here. Has everybody voted?
Everybody's voted and they've taken the ballot out.
All right, I'm going to reconvene the meeting here. Yeah, they're going to do the vote, but we may as well get some business done, Bob. Thank you, Councillor Gale. That wasn't my purpose, Bob. Okay, there's any notices of motion? Looks like Councillor DeZero is running over, so she must have a notice of motion. So any notices of motion, and then we'll get to other business. Councillor DeZero.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to put in a notice of motion with respect to concession 6 in Niagara on the Lake. Can I bring that forward at the next meeting?
Clerk.
Through you, Chair, you can you just give me a bit of detail about what about concession 6?
Oh, okay. What I'd like, sorry, we just have
Go ahead,
to
Councillor DeZero.
say the title. Concession, right now, the Mewburn Bridge is being fixed and repaired. And there has been some discussion previously with respect to a portion of concession 6 in Niagara on the Lake being taken over by the region. And I'd like to make a notice of motion that we ask staff to review and report back on whether that's a possibility.
CAO.
Through Chair, so this was discussed at the last Public Works meeting, and there was a commitment of staff to come back with further reporting.
I missed that meeting.
Yeah, no problem, but we are, the staff are already coming back with a report on that.
Beautiful, thank you. then.
Great. I think we
Sorry.
read the mind of Councilor Lucero on that. Any others? Okay, is there any other business limited to announcements? Here's your big chances. Councilor Hewson. Well, go ahead.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Actually, there's two things. I'm hoping, I'm interested in how we can be greener in our procurement strategy. So I'm hoping staff can provide some type of report on recommendations we can make to green our procurement strategies.
Our CAO will comment on this.
Through you, Chair, so the procedure bylaw does limit this to announcements, but the request of the councillor certainly would be appropriate to bring forward through corporate services.
Okay, so
Great suggestion.
Can I not ask about one of the bids that were in the correspondence? I have a question about one of the bids that were posted.
Clerk?
Again, that could be committee.
So I'll ask the clerk to rule on that. Oh, the CAO is going to.
Well, I was going to defer to the clerk, but no, as I stated, the regular council, the other business is confined to announcements, but there's certainly a valid question. We'll take it away now, but it would be most appropriate at Corporate Services Committee.
Maybe you can get back to me. I'm interested in, where is it? 2018 RFP 94, a project consultant and transaction advisory services for material recycling facility. So I'd like to know what this is. This, I believe, speaks for a recycling facility, and I'm hoping you can provide me with some information on what we're doing with our recycling facility.
Through you, Chair. So we've heard the question. We'll bring back a response through Public Works Committee.
Okay, an announcement.
Go ahead.
To the point, this weekend is Summerfest in Pelham, and it starts tonight, so we're missing day one. But it will resume tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday, and it's an extremely fun time. And there's bands, we close the street down. It's very family friendly, so I would welcome all of you to come to Pelham this weekend. So where the arches used to be, and will soon to be again, it's on Pelham Road in front of where Town Council is, on the stretch where the arches used to be. And it is a very fun event, and I welcome you all to attend. Thank you.
For those who are coming in from outside, will there be road closures that we should watch for?
So the road closure is on Pelham Road, so if you come up Highway 20, you can find some parking, I guess, around there, or perhaps I think some of the churches some of the churches allow for extra event parking. Glen Green School has event parking, so if you come from the other side, from the Welland side, you can come up Pelham that way. And yeah, it's a fun time, so please come out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Houston. Sounds like a great time. We'll keep our fingers crossed for good weather. And I have Councillor Rigby. Oh, Councillor Bellows first.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Sandy.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if we could have information about what's going on in our cities. As a city councillor, I always wondered why regional councillors didn't show up at events that we had at the City of St. Catharines. I now understand because they don't get the invite or that communication is not forwarded. I've spoken to Mayor Sunzik and he has sent some communication out, but I really think it's important. If we're regional councillors, then let's get the mayors or your clerks to send it to the region so that could put in our calendars so that we know, so the people of the region know that we do care and we do want to go to events, but I need your staff to populate that for us. So if that could be made, I'd really appreciate it.
Great stuff. Mayors, you've heard Councillor Bellows' plea. I know you'll be providing all that information. Councillor Rigby now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this weekend, we have an event that is happening in Port Dalhousie. And in fact, it's a continuation of the Niagara Jazz Festival. And Niagara Jazz Festival has been very successful in Niagara on the Lake. And they've they've moved up. And this weekend, they will be having a Mardi Gras and a jazz festival concert in the Henley Grandstand. And there's a lot of work that's gone into this one, where you'll be able to sit by the water side and not worry about getting washed out, and be able to listen to some very good jazz that will be played. And that will be starting about 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 20th of July. And I know that there are a number of people hoping to be there, and my understanding is the food is Mardi Gras style, so it's worthwhile to come to.
Very good. Councillor Steele, we know what's happening down there.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I would hope that Councillor Bellows opened a package a couple weeks ago that I left here with everybody. Well, then,
Canal Day.
You should have mentioned that when you got up and spoke, because Port Colborne does provide you with what's going on in Port Colborne, where we want you to participate. So that's as Barb and I know, that's our moniker. You read it all the time. So August 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th is our 41st, or the first of the next 40 years, Canal Days, in celebration of our marine heritage. Not in any specific order. We have our kite show on August 3rd and 4th. That's off of West Side Road, near on the old cement plant property. Our car show, which is a 27th, I believe, car show, is August 4th at the Valley Health and Wellness Center on Elizabeth Street. That's a new venue for that. We had to go bigger because they get about 800 cars in to our car show. The West Street area is closed off for vendors, the tall ships that come in, the EM Cotter, which is a Buffalo fireboat that helped put out the fire at Maple Leaf Mills in 1962, I think is the date, somewhere back when I was born. We have a Canadian Coast Guard vessel in, that'll be there. Concerts are at H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park, which the city moved last year. We've gone from a 5,000 seat, you can call it that even though you bring your own chair, seat venue to over 10,000. Friday night is Revive the Rose out of Welland, Ontario, Honeymoon Suite out of the great city of Niagara Falls, and David Wilcox. Saturday is I Mother Earth, Finger 11, and Alibi. Sunday, we are bringing back our country night. We have Doc Walker, Madeline Merlot, who's a Canadian top country artist who's now out of Nashville, and Brad Battle, which I believe is a local fellow. Another Niagara Falls boy? Okay. And Monday we have the famous Caverners, Beatles tribute band, and Tim E. Hendry, who is a world champion tribute artist to Elvis. We have lighthouse tours, which take place at the Sugarloaf Marina, so it's $15 for an adult and $5 for kids. Sunday night, we have our famous boat parade of lights, and we have the best fireworks show on all of Niagara along West Street, which we host over 40,000 people on a Sunday night for that. So look forward to Canal Days, and some of you have talked to me here tonight or called me, and have obviously, as Councillor Bellows said, has contacted Nancy Giles at the city. I know some of you are away, some of you you're working Rib Fest here in St. Catharines, which is another great event, but if you can, just try to get down a little bit to Canal Days and see what Port Colborne's all about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So you mentioned Rib Fest. That was very nice of you to do that on behalf of St. Catharines councillors. Councillor Billsman, what's happening in West Lincoln?
Actually, no, I would like to make a correction from my announcement last week, but I attributed the farm tour to regional staff, and it was the Niagara North Federation of Agriculture that organized the event, and so I'd just like to correct that for all to know, but they did a good job, and it was an interesting tour.
Thank you very much, and Councillor Greenwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you all enjoyed the croissants today and the jam that was provided at dinner time. It's from the Southbridge Jam Company and the Third Space Cafe in Niagara Falls. These two organizations were successful in the NPI funding that we worked so hard to assist, and they're both two very successful stories. The Southbridge, they make the jam. And Southbridge, if you're not familiar with Southbridge, they help the homeless and the opportunity to develop job training and life skills. And it's a great major fundraiser for them, and I encourage everyone to purchase some of their jam. The Third Space Cafe has all the homemade things that they make there, especially the croissants. And it's a social enterprise as well, aiming to provide ethically sourced and superior quality local products to affordable prices, creating employment opportunities for marginalized folks and persons with disabilities, and foster an inclusive, safe place to connect, learn, and build the community. So I please ask that you check these spots out and hope you enjoyed their tasty products.
Great
Thank you.
stuff. Councillor Redekop.
Thank you, Chair. I want to announce that starting tonight, the 33rd Annual Friendship Festival is underway at Mather Arch, property owned by the Niagara Parks Commission. Tonight was the midway, the kids get out, but that runs right through till Sunday. Tomorrow there are events and activities starting in the afternoon. There's a rock concert tomorrow night at Mather Arch. Saturday there's a bunch of activities, children's activities, etc. There's a country music concert that evening. 5 o'clock on Saturday, there's a line dancing display and exhibition. It's a display, but it's an exhibition because I'll be participating.
Wow.
And then there's more events on Sunday. I understand the weather's going to be excellent. Since Councillor Steele is unaware of where the best fireworks in Niagara are, you should come out to see the fireworks. And I apologize, I won't be around for Canal Days. I've been there in the past. It's an excellent event. And yeah, so I think there's going to be lots of people well entertained this summer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vella, what's happening in Welland?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, this is particularly about an invitation that I received to visit the Hotel du Shaver Health Center. I had never been before. I'm not sure if everyone has had the opportunity to tour it. I believe all councillors will be getting an invitation if you have not already done so. I jumped on it immediately because I had never been there before. And Hotel Du, of course, was started by the nuns years ago and now combined with Shaver. I had a very in-depth tour, and it touched my heart, the work that they do there. I was not aware that the Rankin Cancer Rehab Center was there, as well as the Ludwig Parkinson Center there. Both of those are privately funded through fundraising, and the rest of the organizations are done through provincial funding. But if you do get an opportunity, it was a wonderful visit, and welcome you all to do the same thing that I did and get to know the organization. Thanks.
Thank you, and that is a regional facility. Thank you very much. Councillor Gibson, what's happening in Wainfleet?
Thank you, Chair. No cows at this event. This is Labor Day weekend. I'm away in August at the police conference in Calgary, so I'm going to get my promotion in now. Labor Day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, the Marshville Heritage Festival.
Ah, yes.
We don't have rock bands or anything like that. We have a steam running sawmill. We have a 1 horsepower saw that the horse actually walks on the track, turns all the wheels, and cuts the log. We have all this very interesting stuff all the way back into the 1800s. And everybody dresses, the volunteers, 300 of us, dress in period costumes. Yours truly, being the professional auctioneer, will be auctioning off the hay wagon again. Surplus antiques, we put them on the hay wagon, people come around and we sell them off. And because people all throughout Wainfleet donate to it all the time, and so they get doubles and triplicates, and so we auction them off, raise some money. So Labor Day weekend, it's a little far away, mark it on your calendar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Dart.
So Councillor Redekop said you're doing some exhibition. So are you an exhibitionist then? Is that what you're telling us? Okay. There's a lot we can't tell her. Okay, so in St. Catharines, thank you very much for the lead. We will compete with Canal Days. I got to come up this year though, Bill. And I got to row on the Sunday. So August 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we have our Rotary Rib Fest. Some of you are fellow Rotarians here. So that's always a fun time. It's at Montebello Park in St. Catharines, and every penny that we make, like with many other organizations, goes to charity. There's no money kept for ourselves. So that's the Rotary Rib Fest coming up in early August. Thanks very much. And I will look forward to you, Councillor Redekop, to teaching us how to do some of this dancing stuff too.
Thank you very much. There's so much going on in the Niagara region. Councillor Bellows, I was going to ask you, do you have anything special happening very soon at the Niagara Parks Commission?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. We've got, okay.
It's a new rule.
Okay. We have our pop-up dinner, our 9th pop-up dinner. It's this Saturday at McFarland House. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's sold out. We have a waiting list. We've got concerts every weekend. It's free of charge. Best place to go is go and have a drink or have something at Queen Victoria Place, and you can watch the concert free of charge. We have fireworks every night. It's five minutes long, but the fireworks are there. And there's so many things happening at Niagara Parks. Just go on our website and see it. But our next pop-up dinner is going to be in September. So if you haven't been, it's a great opportunity to try our Feast on Certified foods from our culinary chefs and experts there.
Very good. Thank you very much for all of you for providing us with that information and those very kind invitations. Are we going to announce the result now? Here, just timing is on, and the results will be announced by the clerk. These individuals will be immediately members of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, whoever is chosen. And clerk, I'll ask you to announce the results.
Through you, Chair, the results of the voting are Councillor Steele, Councillor Bilsma, and Councillor Foster will be the 3 appointees. We will need a mover and seconder to do that.
We have a mover and seconder who will move those. I have Councillor Ugolini is moving, and Councillor, let me say...
Chair, point of order, there's a mistake on that list. Look at Councillor Steele at 18. Or unless I'm reading it wrong.
Bilsma, Foster, and Steele, yeah. Councillor Diodati seconding it. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. We go into the closed session is the next.
No.
We don't have any closed session to deal with. So we go now to the bylaws. Okay, we have bylaws. I'm going to call on Councillor Palala for the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kyokyo that bills 2019-57 to 2019-62 be now read and do pass.
Any discussion of any of these? Councillor Gale.
Thank you, Chair. And through you to Commissioner Harrison, I have to be wrong on this because I'm sure that one of the mayors would have stood up because they have staff that analyze some of this. But in bills, the first three, number 57, 58, and 59, we have debentures of 30, the second one 2 times 30, third one 2 times 60. Does that go on our debt?
Commissioner Harrison?
The debt, as you know, Councillor Gale, the region is the only municipal authority that can borrow in the region. So the region borrows on behalf of the lower tiers. So the debt that is shown individually for the municipalities would be shown on the debt of the lower tier municipalities, and the debt that's borrowed for regional purposes would be shown on the debt of the region.
So thank you for that. And through you again, Chair.
Councillor?
I understand that, but how much of that it was on our debt? Could you tell me which ones or how much? And then my next question would be, what is our total debt?
Okay, the debt that was of that total $63 million was 32.4 was for the region, and $31 million was for the individual lambs, and there was 5 municipalities that had taken advantage of the debt issue.
So I'm sorry, I heard that correct.
Counselor, go
32
ahead.
million is ours?
32.4 of the $63.3 million is the regions directly, and $31 million consists of the 5 lower tiers that borrowed.
So thank you for that, and it's still through you, Chair.
Please, yes.
So our debt went up $32 million with this. My question is, what's our total debt as a result of this 32 million or before it? I can do the math.
I don't have that information exactly.
Then if you could please email all
Sure.
us councillors
Certainly.
with that, if you don't mind. My next question is, this happens every year, I would take it. How
Yes.
much was it last year? And you probably won't have that right now.
No,
How much
the
how much have
total,
we taken debentures, just for the region, last year and the year before that and the year before that, approximately?
so the debt for last year was a total of $65.8 million.
In addition to the debt we had, correct?
With the debt that we issued last year was $65.8 million, of which $39 million was the regions and $26.8 million was the lower tiers. The year before that, it was $79.9 million. The region borrowed $59.8 million, and the lower tiers borrowed $20.1 million. And to answer your question previously, this is an annual ongoing thing. We have a capital markets issue every year at this time where we go out to the market to borrow the debt. I think it's important to realize that in 2019, this particular year, the interest rate, the all-in interest rate is 2.371, which again, for the cost of borrowing is a fairly low interest rate.
So I'm sorry to keep asking questions on this.
No,
please, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, again. So our debt went up $32 million approximately as a result of this right now. And that's not covered by levy or anything like this. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I think everybody here is wondering, like I am, did we just go up $32 million in debt? And you're going to email us out how much we have?
I think it's important to understand that we've retired debt as well. It's an ongoing item. We've issued debt, but there's been debt that's been retired. The information was provided in the budget discussions, but I can certainly send out something to all of council to know what our continuity schedule is on the debt that's been borrowed, as well as what's been retired this year.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, Chair, because if we're paying off 20 million and we're taking on 30, then I know that we're getting $10 million in there. And I don't think everybody has as much a concern on that. But if we're just taking in 32 and we're not paying off any of our old debt, I think we all have a concern with that. And I look at these numbers. I'm not concerned with the municipalities. I know they have the right to borrow through us, and they do their own checks and balances, and they watch us and we watch them somewhat, whether we are allowed to or not. But if you can get that back to me on that, and you're going to get back to me how much we had in the last couple of years that we put on there, is that correct?
I can certainly provide the chart that I'm reading off of to you because you probably are not writing it down, but I certainly can tell you the last 5 years of what we borrowed and the breakdown between the lower tier and the upper tier.
And really, I'd like the net amount, what we ended up paying after we paid off what we have left and added to our debt every year. Because I know we have a concern. I know I've talked to Councilor Dart about this, how much our debt is going up. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gale. There being no further business, this meeting, sorry? Oh, I have to call the question, folks, first. Better call the question on these. Councilor Vella wants me to do so. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Now, there being no further business, we are adjourned.